Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Friday. It is May the 22nd. We're going to be talking about, I don't know, the invasion of Cuba. Let's do it. I mean, we've already done Venezuela. I think Marco Rubio is in charge of Venezuela still. Nobody can tell me otherwise. So then we did a really great, successful, we've won so many, I don't know how many times we've won, but we've already won the war in Iran, like dozens, if not maybe hundreds of times, sometimes multiple times a day we've won the war. Turns out the Iranians didn't find out and they don't want to give up their nuclear material, but that's okay. We're good. We have a pretty much unblemished record. So maybe we should go after Cuba. I was just thinking that, and then I thought, who would let me know if that was the right plan? And so I opened up Fox News, and sure enough, there's some saber rattling that it's time. We've indicted a 94-year-old man, Raul Castro, who is now basically on life support, barely alive. And so perhaps we'll go in there and snatch him up Maduro style, and then we might as well hold on to the rest of the country while we're at it. America first, by going after other countries that are not America and trying to straighten them up. Sounds really good. I'm excited about it. I don't know about you guys. Also, January 6th slush funds are causing big problems because it really, really hurts people's feelings. The Republicans continue to act like the minority, even though they're in the majority. Got some clips about that. And then maybe the biggest piece of news that we should all be aware of. If you are being called an anti-Semite in 2026, in May of 2026, it's the new racism. So kind of like orange was the new black, anti-Semitism is the new racism. We're just going to abuse that word to the point where it means absolutely nothing. And so that PSYOP will continue as well. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that. I'm going to bring on Steve Friend very, very shortly, and we'll get into what that's all about. Guys, if you haven't heard about my friends over at Silent, you should check into them. I actually had somebody mention to me last night on our call-in show that they use a Faraday cage to keep track of their key fobs. Actually, I keep my key fobs when I'm traveling in a Faraday bag, as well as other stuff, my phones and so on, because I just don't like going through the airport and feeling what they're going to snatch and grab from us. The fun thing about the Silent backpack I have is it's almost TSA proof. Maybe it's because they weren't getting paid, but the TSA guys couldn't even figure out how to get into my roll top backpack, which is waterproof. Government agencies, big tech, corporate data brokers, cyber criminals are all trying to get a piece of your digital footprint. They don't have to ask. And that's why you might check out Silent at slnt.com/KYLE, silent.com/Kyle. You're going to save yourself 15%. You'll get free shipping on qualified orders. They make Faraday gear that blocks the signals coming out of your phones and your laptops and your key fobs, it turns out, even. Cellular, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, RFID, near-field communication, whatever it is. No signal means no tracking, no remote access, no breadcrumbs. It's the same kind of technology that counterintelligence agents use, that special operations teams use. They block signals, they try to avoid surveillance, they secure the comms wherever the mission leads. You guys can get your own. You can also just keep your health and your peace of mind by just turning off that device. For me, it's nice to be able to shut down the phone that communicates with my watch, which tells me what the heck is going on all the time. Sometimes I just don't want to know. Even if it means that we're going to invade Cuba without me knowing, that would be fine. Drop your phone in a silent Faraday sleeve, get off the grid, get completely silent, invisible to the outside world, and maybe do that this weekend. Maybe go up there and fire up your electric lawnmower and clean the lawn up, and put your phone away so you don't have to listen to any of that stuff. Send the comments about the electric lawnmower starting now. Let's get into today's program. Here we go. Yes. Okay. And by the way, for some reason, the electric lawnmower is a thing that people fixate on. Every single time I mention it, it blows up the chat. You guys are very, very upset about it. It's an awesome lawnmower. I only used like half my battery, and I've got a 1/4 acre of property to mow. And I did it yesterday just in time. I almost never get my lawn mowed in time for the rain. That's kind of like my favorite. If I can get it mowed and then the rain comes in, then I feel like I'm winning. And I mowed the lawn, and then I stowed it standing upright, because that's what the advantage is. It gets to fold into a little box. It's the closest lawnmower that I've ever had to the kid in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, where he had that tiny lawnmower, but it didn't have that stupid handle sticking out, which takes a lot of space. Yeah. Anyway, let's get into lawnmowers. Let's get into mowing the lawn over in Cuba. And I think this is the theme song for the American Radicals podcast. So that must mean that we're going to bring on Steve Friend. What do we do? We're not coordinated today. What are you doing? What color? What do you got going on in there in that shirt?
I think I got some OD green, which I think is your favorite.
How
The
do you know
question,
that?
though, that I have, because everybody's really excited about your electric lawnmower, did you mow the lawn wearing a tracksuit?
I did not.
That's weird.
No. It's super hot here in Texas, and it's muggy and gross. And the only person that has the constitution to put on a polystyrene, whatever, plasticized tracksuit is my son. He's really into it, though, and he'll go outside and he'll be like, it's really hot. I'm like, dude, you're wearing long pants. You're wearing a shirt that's tucked in. By the way, he tucks in the shirt in the tracksuit, and then you have a jacket on. He might be your son, now that I think about it. You were apparently bundled up in West Virginia to do the Timcast. Did anyone tell you it was going to be gay casts? Just sorry about that in advance. I didn't know.
No,
Did
it
you?
was a little bit of a bait and switch upon arrival, because I did get invited to fill in Garfunkel style for you, who is the Simon in the
First of all, I was a fill-in. They didn't want me in the first place. And then they were like, oh, Seraphin, do you want to show up randomly on a Tuesday when you got other stuff going on? And I was like, no. Do you know who always seems down for the cause? Steve Friend. He seems like the kind of guy that would show up.
Seems like the kind of guy who has nothing going on. He could totally arrive here.
Give people the experience of going to Tim. That was the first time you've ever done the Timcast, right?
Yeah, it was first
And you
time,
didn't get Timcast. You got the Fcast or whatever.
I got to
Should I say it?
And
should I just
hey, look, I could have worn a tracksuit and been a collector for you, because George Santos still owes you $100. He was the host of the show. There was also Scott Presler there. We were there the evening of the election, or the primary election in Kentucky. So covering down on that, it was just a lot of electoral politics stuff, which isn't really necessarily what I'm interested in. Not really my jam. Kind of consuming the news of the day is more what I am interested in, what I like to talk about. But I was a little bit encouraged by, I've been worried that maybe I'm chronically online. And then I interfaced with George Santos and Scott Presler, who told me that they couldn't take a day away from Twitter. So I thought, all right, I probably am touching more grass than they are, at least touching enough grass that I could cut it with an electric lawnmower.
And there you go. They need a silent bag, and they also need something. Yeah, gross. So did you get my $100?
No, he took it back. We posted a picture that he sent you, and you refused acceptance. You said you just want to hold it over his head.
I mean, I do want to hold it over his head, but I thought that maybe we could get the money out. I just said Steve Friend is not my authorized representative, so he played you, but I didn't realize you didn't have the money in your hand. I thought we were playing him.
He had a stack. So there's a casino nearby, and he told me that the prior night, because this is how Santos rolls, he just rolls into a casino with $1,000, sits at a blackjack table, $250 a hand, and gets up an hour later having netted himself 15 grand. So he had a bunch of $100 bills available. I'm a little disappointed he didn't just, disseminate a little about that.
What a cheap bastard! And he didn't give you my money.
Yeah, I mean, he was like, "What are you up to these days?" I was like, "Well, I'm available to come out to the Timcast on a Tuesday, so nothing."
That's true. You are. You're available. You're down for the fight. I didn't know I was going to send you over to the Fcast, and I'm sorry about that. So anyhow, that's what happened to you. Was Scott Presler the most impressive human being that you've dealt with?
He's extremely tall. He's 6'5". Which blew me away, because he's out there a lot. I guess he does
looks a lot gayer than that in person, I feel like.
He doesn't have the firm handshake that you would expect from a 6'5" individual. Kind of a quiet dude. I mean, he really was not talking. But Santos is very bombastic. He's an extrovert. I think Scott Presler's a little bit more introverted.
He's as gay as you'd think he's as gay as you think.
Yeah, I think so. But that wound up being the punchline to everything, which made me extremely uncomfortable for about the 3 hours I had to sit there.
Yeah, I actually feel like I probably owe you an apology, although I didn't agree for you to go. So in any case, sorry. I actually am sorry. I didn't. If they had told me, this is the funny thing. It's better you than me, because if I showed up there and they were like, by the way, Seraphin, Tim Pool is sick and we're going to have you on this show and it's going to be hosted by Scott Presler and George Santos, I'd be like, oh, that's cool. Just put me back on the car. I'm just going to go back to Dulles. I'm getting out of here. I'm not going on that show. I don't want to do that. That's not my jam. That sounds way too gay for me.
you gave him the opportunity to set yet another unprecedented mark in the life of being indefinitely suspended forever, twice fired, suspendable. I am the only one, I believe, who's ever gone on the Timcast who has lost followers and viewers. So I've got that going for me.
Yeah, that's because you went on. Yeah, like consider the host, buddy. This is what happens. All right, should we talk about some things that are going on in the world?
Let's send it, man.
This is something I didn't cover yesterday. Yesterday, I thought about this one. I thought it was an important story to get down on. And we had Mike Cargill on talking about bump stocks. And for once, I got to talk a little guns with a gun store owner. And that's always a kind of a good feeling here. This is major Supreme Court cases that are going to be decided in the next couple of weeks, which are a lot of them going to be kind of like the nails or additional nails in the coffin of the MAGA agenda, which makes me sad. And it actually does, because I listened to Tucker Carlson last night. Do you ever catch Tucker's show?
No.
I never do either, just to be completely clear. I never do. And I was scrolling through, and I don't know who said it, but someone mentioned like the first 20 minutes of Tucker's show yesterday was really, really impactful. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll give it a listen. I'm just sitting here about ready to go to bed. So I start listening to it, and I'm not going to play it here, but it's an hour and 20 or hour and 30 minutes. Worth your time, folks, for whatever it's worth. And while I was doing that, like Tom Massie tweeted something about it as well, and it came from the Tucker Carlson network. And Tucker kind of did a walk down memory lane, starting from when he and Charlie Kirk attended the church service before Donald Trump was inaugurated at St. John's Church in Washington, D.C. And he said they sat in the same pew together, and they were talking about how enthusiastic and excited they were that they were finally going to get a guy who was going to do the thing that we thought someone should have done a long time ago, which was harness the GOP up to like the American interest and really do some things about it. And he was kind of tracking when he thought it ended. And it's actually really, really bad. But I think he's right. When Trump stopped talking about what the American people were interested in and stopped that agenda, and then he kind of moved on and started doing this like foreign focus, foreign policy was part of it, but also like it didn't seem like it was the American interest. Just really gross. So anyway, worth your time, folks. I won't re-summarize somebody else's content on there. In the final weeks of the Supreme Court's term, they're fast approaching. This is the coming up into June, July, when you end up getting all the Supreme Court rulings that get handed down for the season. They argue them in the beginning of the year, and then in the middle of the year, we get to hear what they are. And then I guess do they take a break? What do? They just go tour. Doesn't Clarence Thomas just tour the country in like an RV or something? Isn't that his jam?
Yeah, and he gets accused of taking donations. They have a calendar that's like Congress, right? They just randomly show up at some times, and other times they're just off, and yet they get a full-time 12-month-a-year salary. It
seems like a good gig. The High Court has already struck down Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs. They've weakened the Voting Rights Act, which was considered to be a win for the GOP. But before the start of July, the justices will also issue opinions on a couple of legal fights, including state laws targeting transgender athletes. This is CBS News, so we have to consider how they phrased it. Donald Trump, which they call, not President Trump, by the way, in this case, they call him Mr. Trump. It's kind of diminutive. Mr. Trump's birthright citizenship executive order, which is likely to fail, I think. And then the president's effort to fire members of certain independent agencies, amongst others. So we're going to kind of jump through and see the summary of this. This is maybe the most important and kind of boring stuff that goes on. And that tells you what a screwed up country we are. We don't have a legislature that's going out and passing landmark legislation that's doing the job that they are meant to do. We have presidents issuing executive orders and then the Supreme Court deciding whether or not those things are legal, because we have a referee who referees whether or not the quote unquote king that we elected gets to do the thing that we hoped he would do, because we can't be functional.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I think that, the referee analogy kind of holds where the Supreme Court's supposed to be a referee between co-equal branches of government, where there is grinding of the gears naturally between the legislative body and the executive branch. But the legislative body is like, now you can do whatever you want. And then it ultimately comes down to whether or not the executive, were you in bounds when you did exactly what you wanted?
Sadly, what I think we're going to continue to see, and I actually grabbed two clips from Tim Burchett, who's not my favorite, but I think he's accurate in this case. He's not my least favorite either, by the way. My new favorite is based Marjorie Taylor Greene. Since she's left Congress, she has
no power. Yes.
She has no power, which is classic. This is the reason why I think people leave Congress, and this is even scarier to me. But this is the reason why Dan Bongino left the FBI. Now Daniel sits at a podcast desk and he has more power than he would have if he was working as an executive, at a federal agency. So here's your first one. Trump versus Barbara. On the first day back in the White House, he signed an executive order seeking to end birthright citizenship for babies born to parents who are in the U.S. illegally or temporarily. That should be a no-brainer in America.
Yes.
We're going to lose that one. We, America, will lose that one, I think.
Which is just stunning. That is, as much as they like to say, well, no other civilized country has X, Y, Z, whatever the leftist communists are trying to push for.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing about our immigration policy in this country is consistent with anything in any civilized first world nation in the history of the globe, of the planet. You mean to tell me somebody can arrive here, plop out a baby, and they get everything entitled?
They do this too. I mean, like birth tourism is a regular industry in a lot of different countries. It's very common for us to find houses full of illegals or people who have overstayed a visa, with pregnant women lying about the reason they're being there so they can drop a baby, get U.S. citizenship and a birth certificate, and then they'll go back to their native country, a lot of times China, because they can come here at any time then in the future.
For all we hear about how amazing Australia is because they did a gun buyback program, if you tried to arrive in Australia and plop a baby, you would be escorted out of the country immediately. But for whatever reason, and it's pretty clear what the reason is, because the communists want unfettered illegal immigration into the country, and the Republicans, who are not conservative, want it for economic reasons. They're going to argue eventually for electoral reasons. They're diametrically opposed to what the interests are of the American people who voted en masse for mass deportations, and diametrically opposed to what their obligations are as part of our social compact, where the American people agreed to give up a little bit of our liberty in return for a very finite amount of responsibilities that we demand from our government, one of which being enforce the damn border, ensure our sovereignty as a country, stop messing with things like housing bills and health care and free Obama phones, and just put an 18-year-old atop a Humvee at the southern border after having marched the Trail of Tears style of the illegal aliens, 50 million of them down to the Rio Grande, don't even give them a bottle of water and say, don't come back. But we can't do that because, we got to have a softer touch, Steve. We had 2 people killed in Minnesota. Do you remember their names, America? Because of the spin cycle here. The news cycle is 15 seconds long, and nobody remembers anybody like Alex Preddy or Renee Good. I have the ability, because I'm in this space, to remember that, but almost nobody else does, except the Trump administration, which wants to go back to the days of getting along so well with the New York Times and the Washington Post and Axios, which never happened.
I feel like I dropped a quarter in the in a hot button issue for you there, Steve. You've got a like a machine gun of accuracy on that. And by the way, I do think we should maybe take a camera down to like downtown Austin and see what's going on in Jacksonville or Daytona, and just ask people, hey, do you remember the name Renee Good? What was that all about? Who's Alex Preddy? Why was that guy name in the news cycle? I'm trying to just take a poll. Yeah, most people.
Are you politically active and engaged? Yes. Do you know who Renee Good is? No. But we got to pass the SAVE Act, because if we pass the SAVE Act, then we can elect Republicans. And if we elect Republicans, then we can have elections. So we can elect Republicans who can then run in elections. So we can have elect Republicans. That's basically what they're pitching.
Here's the problem. When I made this analysis, I had, I think it was Scott McFarlane, and I don't think I'm outing anything by saying that he had this conversation with me. He said, I think you're correct that MAGA and the Republicans really like being an opposition party. They don't really know how to govern. They don't know how to take power and then translate it into action. And I think we see that. But I actually don't think that anybody likes to be in power, because when you're in power, then you're the party that's responsible. The only crazy thing is that we continue to march ever leftward in this nation. And so that's evidenced by the Overton window shift, and it doesn't matter who you talk to. It's pretty clear to me that the positions being held by today's Republican Party are pretty close to what the 90s Democrats did. They're getting a little better on a couple things. There's some pro-life issues at the state level that are decent. We had, some Supreme Court decisions that have come down in favor. But at the end of the day, are the most important issues that affect our finances, and certainly the spending. We're at $40 trillion, right? It's not like they're really trying to take this and do it. I actually have a summary that Mike Johnson did about what is the Conservative Party, what is the Republican Party. I'm going to save that for some comedy. Let's first start with Tim Burchett. He walked out of a meeting and he lined up what the issue is when the majority refuses to act like it. And so they get beaten by the minority. And then the minority, when they take the majority, will act like the majority. So somebody refuses to do the job, and here's what it sounds like.
Hey, everybody. Tim Burchett just left the committee. Had some amendments that were cutting regulation, things that we should as Republicans do. Because of backroom deals they cut. They won't allow any amendments on the bill because the Democrats one Democrat didn't agree to it. So here we are in the majority, and we're not allowed to do that. And I'll guarantee you when the Democrats are in the majority, which they very much could be because of this kind of garbage. If we're going to be in the majority, you all have extended us an incredible gift, and we're going to blow it because we're not acting like we're in the majority. We got opportunity. It's not sexy. Deals with bridges and things. Anyway, the amendment did, and we allow the Democrats to tell us what to do. It's just unbelievable. At some point, we're going to have to give some guts. This town is crooked as a dog's leg, and I'm disgusted. So, thank y'all for sending me here. I really am glad you sent me here. This is the kind of stuff I want to fight, and I'll let them have it. Anyway.
I know that sounds folksy. What is your reaction to that?
He's so full of crap. I can't
thank y'all
take him
for sending me
seriously.
here.
Thank you very much for sending me here. Yeah, so you can collect that $170,000 a year job, and you're here fighting for what? For what?
It's
You
crooked
said
as a dog's leg, Steve.
they made a deal in back rooms. Who is they, Congressman? Why don't you name them while you're talking into your cell phone, which apparently is the only thing that you're elected to do at this point, to rub the belly, to scratch the id on the base of the people who sent you there who say, oh, he's fighting for us. Can you point to a fight that you have actually engaged in at all? You won't even tell us what the nature of the amendments are because you haven't read the amendments. Well, it was good. It was about bridges or some odd thing.
That may actually not be his fault because I got another clip from him, and apparently they sat around for a couple of days. And look, he's not running this, but he's just a symptom. So I try not to get mad at symptoms. I just want to look at it and go, look what you just told us. And then there's no outcry. And the most we're going to get is a Twitter post going back home to the constituents saying, thanks for sending me here. Vote me in again because I'm going to let you know the real truth. They dropped 1,000 pages on us the day that we needed to deal with it. Here he is talking about, we sat around for 2 days. I've been in town all week. Theoretically, we could be doing the job. We're not. Then they call committee, and then they drop these huge bills, and then we just run it out there. Here we go.
Everybody, Tim Burchett. It's after 1 o'clock. We're leaving
in the morning.
Transportation Committee. I was here Monday and Tuesday, and we didn't do anything. And here it is. What is it? Thursday night? Friday morning. Monday and Tuesday we didn't meet at all, and then we get dropped a 1,000-page bill. When did they drop it on us?
This weekend, Sunday.
Saturday, Sunday, and then Chairman Graves, who's a Republican, voted against. It looked like a majority of the Republican amendments, and most of them died, and they were all pretty good, doing away with those crazy traffic cameras. And they're
just like the energy level. I understand that that's kind of his ethos. He's kind of a guy who just kind of goes on like that. Having met him in person in Tennessee, that's how he was. But
yeah, I met him too.
It's just.
Yeah. Well,
That's
at least credit to him for at least naming Graves out there. If you're elected to go out there and fight for your constituents, and you recognize that, look, I'm 1 out of 435. There's not a whole lot that I can do to move the ball forward on policy measures. And if I try, I'm probably going to lose my seat because my name is Thomas Massie. Well, if I'm going to fight the fight from the inside, at least blow up people's names so that people know, because your constituents know, the American people know, the footprint that you have because of Twitter is very unique. Then put people on blast so that we know who the problem people are.
This is the other. Oops, that's not the right thing I wanted to pull. There we go. There's the other case. Transgender sports athletes, girls. This is Little versus Hecox. Little v. Hecox and West Virginia v. BPJ. 27 states enacting laws that prohibit transgender athletes. This is where it should go down. So people have challenged them. They've made it to the Supreme Court as sort of a pair of cases. And then we're going to find out whether or not that violates equal protection. This is going to be Title IX stuff. You cannot make it up that Title IX, which was the reason that we had like inferior female sports teams were required if you wanted to have a superior male sports team and all your different levels of athletics. It's the same thing that's being used to decide whether or not dudes with penises can play with the girls because they feel pretty, as you like to say.
Yeah. It makes no sense in a bacon cheeseburger nationalist sense. This should not be at the highest court in the land because there should theoretically be a dad or 12 at every single game who says, you're not letting that dude on the field with my daughter over my dead body. That's the logical way that an objectively good society would handle the situation. But this is clickbait. This is debates that we can have, and we can push forward the political football one way or another so that the politicians can run on issues that are just commonsensical to anybody with their operating prefrontal cortex. But this is the way we are right now. We don't have serious conversations about serious matters. It's just all of this puffery that is actually the palace intrigue that gets people's attention.
Sad thing, too. As a dad, it's not that hard to just make a decision, and then you make a decision that's right for your family. If everybody did it, then the system would have to change to accommodate you. We had two little girls that were in a girls' gymnastics class for little girls, 5, 6, 7 years old. And they had a couple of cute little college-y athletic girls that were doing gymnastics, whatever that was. And it's like, fine. Are they going to learn how to be gymnasts on the Olympic team? No. They're doing activities on a mat at a YMCA. I think that's going to be fine. And then they introduced a new instructor. And the new instructor was clearly a male who wore makeup and women's jewelry and had long hair and dressed in feminine sweatsuits. And it's like, my girls knew that was a guy. I just wasn't going to let some guy that was gender confused to be out there instructing. And so I took them out, and I told the people at the YMCA, I said, my children are done, effective immediately. And our membership is over here, effective immediately. And they're like, well, you can't just withdraw. It's like, yeah, not only I can, good luck coming after me. I spend thousands of dollars a year with my credit card company. They're not going to honor you over me. So the charges will all be denied. You can charge it all you want. I will deny the charges. I'm going to financially withdraw my support from a group that hires this young man, to do girls' gymnastics instruction because I don't think that's appropriate. The end. I'm a dad. I get to make decisions that protect my girls. That's it. Go fuck yourself. You should
say you're welcome. I'm preemptively removing myself from a situation where I'd have to skin him alive.
That's the understated piece of it. You try not to say that too many times to like lib ladies that are in suburbs of Texas, but that's what should have ended this. And instead, what we have is a fight at the state level and now at the Supreme Court. So anyway, that's one of them. Another one, this is also equally stupid. And I actually side with the Trump administration on all these things, it turns out. Like, I actually do want this agenda. It just turns out that it would have been better if maybe, I don't know, Congress got involved and instead of doing nothing. Here we go. Trump v. Slaughter. This is Mr. Trump. Again, this is CBS News calling him Mr. Trump, not President Trump, sought to expand the bounds of executive power. Well, the funny thing is that people will look at you and I and they'll be like, you guys are so critical and you're always, bashing on Donald Trump. It's like only when Donald Trump requires bashing, when he did things that were right, which, by the way, these are all from the beginning of his term, when he was on the team and seemed like he was doing the thing we thought he was. It's like, yeah, I'm on board. Even if I don't like it, I'm down with the idea that the president of the United States has the ability to remove the heads of executive agencies. Or is he not the president?
Have you noticed how few of these court injunctions, these universal injunctions, have been filed, say, in 2026? Because they just don't have a reason to push back, to use the lawfare to resist the policies that we were getting early on. These things are now down the pipeline so far that they've reached the Supreme Court because they're old. They're a year and a half old.
They're crying here about Rebecca Slaughter, who was on the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, was fired without cause, and that clashed with a 1914 law that limited the president's ability to remove people that the president appoints.
It's a deep pull from the legal eagles out there to try to do whatever they could to throw up the bulwark, the roadblocks, the speed bumps for the Trump 47 agenda that came in. And again, the agenda is what got the president elected.
So here you go. In September, the Supreme Court allowed Mr. Trump to fire Slaughter. Again, Mr. Trump. They really are hammering this home. And they agreed to decide whether the removal protections for members of the Trade Commission violated the separation of powers. Also at issue in the case is whether they can overrule a 1935 decision, Humphreys Executor versus United States. In that 90-year-old ruling, the Supreme Court said that Congress could restrict the president's ability to fire officials from multi-member agencies at will. So the president can be the hiring authority and is given, some mandate and dollars to go execute it. And then Congress decides whether or not the president can fire that person. Anyway, all this stuff is a mess. There's another one about the firing of the Fed governor, Lisa Cook. And so there's going to be Trump v. Cook is coming up. These are a couple of the same sort of vein. See if there's some other ones in here. Late arriving mail ballots and the meaning of Election Day. This is Watson v. Republican National Committee. So that one's going to be coming up shortly as well. And so we can expect all these things in, let's say, the next month. Anyway, my point is that we're now dealing with a time when we know that the legislature is not doing its job. And they're telling you that they're not functional. You got guys like Burchett telling you this. I've actually got this great clip of Mike Johnson I'm going to play in a couple seconds. So you can see just what they think their job is. And then you can also hold them accountable. Like, do their fruits bear out to the thing that they claim that they're involved in, that guides their belief? And then when you line up on the other end of it, you should be like, oh, we're not going to vote our way out of this. That should be the conclusion. I don't know how you come anywhere else with it.
Well, the way that we have now been trained to view our government. Look, I went down this history. I nerded out in preparing for AMRAD today. One of my favorite presidents, Democrat, is Grover Cleveland. And one of the things that he's infamous for is being the veto president. And the most famous veto that he issued was from the Texas Seed Bill in 1887. And I read his statement upon issuing the veto because there was a drought in Texas. House and Senate passed this aid bill that was going to be sent to Texas to buy their seeds for them. And the president of the United States, a Democrat, said, we can't do that. It's not in our pesky, dusty documents. It's not obligation of the government. It's not what the government does for the American people. It's what the people do for the government. And beyond that, if I were to do that, it will fundamentally change the way that the American people interact with their government, because they're going to view the government as this paternalistic figure that provides all things charitable, when in fact the American people at their core are charitable, and we will snuff that out of them if it comes from the government. But that sounds like the most conservative, principled opinion possible now. Do you think that guy would be allowed in the room when they're making the backroom deals on some building or bridge bill with Tim Burchett?
That's crazy. That's a crazy statement. He's in line with what James Madison said that charity is no obligation or legislative duty of the government. It turns out the crazy thing I think about this stuff too, Steve, is that when you do something like that, and apparently Grover Cleveland saw this, when you start filling in something that should come from an alternative pathway, in other words, charity in this case, it's the same thing that happens in the human body. If you start a path, like anybody that's decided like, oh, I'm going to do testosterone replacement.
The low T thing. Yeah, I was just thinking
you are now going to be replacing testosterone for the rest of your life, because your body's going to be like, well, if you're going to get it from somewhere else, I'm not going to put any energy into that. And the American people think the same way. We have this instinct. It's like somebody should take care of that person, but I already write a huge check out to this federal government for taxes, and I know some of that handles homeless people. So why should I go out and try to take care of people in my community? I already pay taxes on every single thing coming and going. Every dollar I have is taxed twice for the most part. So why wouldn't? Why wouldn't I expect them to do it?
It doesn't make you apathetic. It makes you resentful. Like, I pay my darn taxes. Why isn't this being handled? And how dare you ask me for charity because I pay my taxes? You just have a resentment for people who need a hand up.
That's it. And then theoretically, there's this one party that's out there that claims that they're in the business of small government and going back traditional values and all this kind of stuff. And then you hear what you hear Tim Burchett say. And what did he say? They fail. They act like the majority, like they don't have power when they have it. And then when they don't have power, they'll complain about not having power. And this is Mike Johnson telling you the values of the Republican Party. I feel like, based on the speed of his delivery, he's said this a bunch of times. I also feel like he doesn't believe this even a little bit. This might be the most disingenuous, slimy delivery of a platform that sounds like utter bullshit. If you guys think Smithers is on the ball, please make sure you comment below. But here is Smithers, aka Mike Johnson. They're not booing you, Mr. Burns. They're saying boo Burns. Boo Burns. Here he is telling you what Republicans are all about. Allegedly.
What is the Republican Party? What is American conservatism? What is the Republican Party? It's individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. I don't ask much more of anybody, but you got to hold to the core principles that made us the greatest nation in the history of the world. I never ask anybody to violate a core principle, but they have to. You have to give up on some of your personal preferences sometimes because you're in a deliberative body and you have 434 colleagues, okay, other people. So that's the message. It's nothing more than that. The president has the strongest endorsement in the history of politics, as I mentioned. But we don't demand loyalty to the president. What I demand as Speaker of the House is loyalty to our core principles, the principles of our party, which are the principles of America, and that's what we're standing for. Jake.
What have you said to Prime Minister Netanyahu about Iran and how long to hold off on strikes?
He's fine. He'll do whatever I want him to do. He's a very, very good man. He'll do whatever I want him to do, and he's a great guy. To me, he's a great guy. Don't forget, he was a wartime prime minister, and he's not treated right in Israel, in my opinion. I'm right now at 99% in Israel. I could run for prime minister, so maybe after I do this, I'll go to Israel, run for prime minister.
Yeah, he has a strong mandate in Israel, apparently, but not in the United States because his approval ratings here are either in the low 30s or they might be in the high 20s at this point. So anyway.
We'll see CNN reporting that his poll numbers in Israel are so high that 100% of people who support Donald Trump in Israel support Donald Trump in Israel.
That's true. That's very good. I'm
core
thrilled to find this
thing,
out.
Real quick on Mike Johnson.
Please.
When Mike Johnson was in the running and eventually became the Speaker of the House, his wife was affiliated with some Christian counseling service. And one of the services that they offered was for people who were trans. And there was the counseling of, no, Harry, you can't become a Sally. Let's do some sort of a faith-based counseling service for you. So Mike Johnson, who holds on to his principles, that's what his demand is so much as that they removed that service from the website because he's a Christian nationalist, Speaker of the House, who principles really matter to Smithers, right?
Clearly, everyone thinks so. At least that's what he says in that sort of this. He had the same amount of energy delivering that BS about what is Christian conservatism and what is American conservatism. By the way, I love that he conflated Republican and conservatism because he's trying to get the people that are like me, that are like you, that are like, hey, how about you just do the thing that you said you would do? We have to believe also that we're one of them. I saw a bunch of MAGA influencer types that were trying to shame people. They're like, are you trying to be like the kid who takes their ball and goes home? It's like, yeah, I'm trying to be like the dad who pulls my kid out of a toxic environment. I'm going to keep being that person. And I don't need to apologize to you, but good luck with your scolding. I saw, a couple of things on X where people were trying to scold people who said, I don't think this vote works. And by the way, there's some pretty good evidence based on the show we did 2 days ago. It's pretty clear to me that we are not seeing a fair or valid election. You and I are getting word in the background from people who talk to folks in the intelligence community. And it's like everybody knows that the primaries can be stolen just the way they could steal a national election. If you believe one can be stolen, you think that the party can't rig it in favor of their preferred outcome? That's craziness to think otherwise. I'm going to show you some funny evidence about it, too.
The conflation between Republican and conservative is hysterical. I mean, because they conflate, are you an anti-Semite if you're anti-Zionist? Or the action where they say, hey, if you're not on board and loyal enough to our guy, not the principles, but to our guy, we're going to exile you from the movement. And then we're going to come back at you and say, well, why did you leave and take your ball and go home? We need you in the next election, because if we don't win this election and pass the SAVE Act, then we're not going to be able to elect more Republicans who hold on to their core principles where they say, Harry, I guess, can become a Sally because it got us from heat from the New York Times.
Yeah, we want to avoid those bad things. We didn't like any of the pressure. And so anyway, how else are we going to make deals with Democrats if we're going to share? We got to be able to move the ball. We need to move the ball forward. You're only one of 435. That's why we need to get rid of Tom Massie and spend $20-something million on it. Seems reasonable. Let me jump over here and just say, folks, if you're watching on Rumble, give us a like. Same thing on YouTube. Check out my buddy Steve's program at the American Radicals podcast. It's at AmRadPod. You should follow him over there on Spotify and on YouTube and on Rumble as well. You can give him a like while you're there. Subscribe to all the channels that we've got here. You may hear an ad from the folks on Spotify if you're listening to audio. There's a little spot for it right there. And if you're not watching and you're just listening and you think maybe I want to see some of these graphs that Seraphin's talking about, well, then you can see us over at KyleSeraphinShow.com. They did get some loyalty, Steve. They got this loyalty right here. The Senate moved forward a War Powers Act that was going to curb the power of Donald Trump to wage war in Iran. And so House Republicans were able to spike that. So when it's in favor of keeping the Israeli/American president war, then we're good. But if you want to do something like, I don't know, like the SAVE Act, we can't get that done. By the way, Massie voted in favor of the SAVE Act, and now it's just languishing over in the Senate. They can get a War Powers Act. They can get that through the Senate, but they can't. It's always funny. You can get it through one, but not the other. Oh, there was just a sticking point. It's like they take turns saying, okay, who's going to be the one that's in opposition, who's fighting, and who's resisting.
When they talk about backroom deals, that's exactly what those deals are. Hey, we need you to be the one that votes no on this one because you're not in cycle. So people will forget it because their memories are so short. So when you run for re-election in 4 years rather than 2 because you're a senator, nobody will hold this against you. And look, we're seeing the Trump endorsement go for a Ken Paxton, right, in Texas over John Cornyn because he's going after the incumbents, right? You know what that says to me? Well, John Thune is the majority leader in the Senate, and he just, dag-nabbit, he couldn't pass that SAVE Act, which was just so important that the American people had to elect Republicans to the Senate and the House in order to get, and they just couldn't get it over the finish line. We're sorry. What that means to me is John Thune saying it doesn't matter if we have Cornyn or Paxton. There's no difference because Paxton said, I'll drop out of the race if you pass the SAVE Act, and they didn't do it. That's tantamount to an admission from this majority leader in the Senate that it doesn't matter. You just put one in or the other one. It's the same.
Luckily, Scott Pressler has come to Texas to run around and pretend to be a barbecue aficionado and brush his gay ass long hair.
So for an hour, man.
I saw the funniest thing. Like he was just like, I've landed in Texas and I'm here to help do the thing. We're going to get John Cornyn out of office. And somebody was like, get out of my state, faggot. That was like the funniest post I saw. And I was like, that might be the most Texas person out there. That's the Texas that I remember. People just be like, excuse me, what? Based Southern lady. She had to leave politics before she could start talking for real. I'm not an MTG fan. I don't think she's a moral character. I don't think she's probably a good person either. But I do enjoy the iteration of post-Congress Marjorie Taylor Greene. This little clip stood out to me. It was kind of fun. I've got two from Major Garrett. By the way, if you name your son Major and he turns out like this, what should be the punishment? Actually, I was going to make a statement. I'm going to make a question to you. What's the punishment if you name your son Major Garrett and he turns out to be Major Garrett?
Man, that's a really good question. I got to contemplate that for a second. Give it a play and I'll have something.
Now imagine, so imagine that so we're on par. Garrett O'Boyle has a son and he decides to name his son Major Garrett O'Boyle, and that son turns out like this. What does that say about you as a parent? Okay, so chew on that for a second. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene. This is the new base Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Upon Thomas Massie's defeat Tuesday night, Marjorie, you said that he was a giant among weak, pathetic men. Who are the weak, pathetic men you referred to?
Many of the men that I served with in Congress and the United States House of Representatives, primarily the men that make these promises on the campaign trail and then never deliver them. And it's actually Thomas Massie who was one of the few members of Congress that did follow through with his promises to his constituents.
And that got him, in some cases, the direct ire of the President of the United States. Do you include him in that category of weak, pathetic men?
Well, actually, it shouldn't. See, that's the thing, is it shouldn't have gotten him in the ire of President Trump, because actually Thomas Massie's policies and his bills and his voting record was very America first, is very America first. He'll still be there for 7 more months. And that is what has so many people upset. In 2024, the American people delivered a mandate, and the mandate was put America first, no more foreign wars. We wanted accountability, demanded accountability from the elites, and primarily the Epstein class. And it was Thomas Massie that was following through on that exact mandate. So there never should have been this disagreement.
He looks like an aging lesbian. What happens if you are the guy that does that? You have he's got about a 6 head as well. He's got a pretty intense forehead. And then on top of that, he decided to do tall top hair, which looks pretty funny. If you're that guy, what should we do to you as a parent if you create that?
I think we strap you down Clockwork Orange style. Make sure that your eyes are open and you have to intersplice watching Major Garrett do interviews with Lindsey Graham videos being told that we have more war on the horizon.
Okay, that sounds like a terrible punishment. I don't want that for anybody. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene's Twitter post from, I think, day before yesterday. She wrote, "This is MAGA now. Don't be a panikin. Just celebrate more H-1B visas." I'm telling you, this is the funniest version. That's former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, former Rep MTG. This is MAGA now. Don't be a panikin.
She sounds like Phil Kennedy.
Yeah,
Fully
Phil Kennedy
radicalized.
he did a pretty aggressive turn, which is really funny to watch. I always knew what the real Phil Kennedy was, but he was always playing nice. Mm-hmm. Trump's H-1B approval rate for his second term is higher than his first term, and Obama's, tying Biden's in his first year. The current rate of approval and the pace of applications, Trump could end up approving more H-1B visa applications than in his first term. So there you have it. We are at 93.8% approval rating on the 6.1 million H-1B visa petitions filed. That's across the last, looks like it's 15 years? Is that what I'm seeing? 16 years? Something like that?
Looks like
very interesting. Obama had a 94.5%. Trump 1 was 88.4%. Trump 2, 97.6%. If you want to come to America, don't be a panikin. Embrace the H-1B.
Those who want to come to America have 100% approval of Donald
We
Trump.
we have less train. We have like really good train safety here. So there's less people who are getting MF'd by the train in the back, which is helpful. We played that video clip earlier this week, and I was like, oh, do you know about the bloody move train alert?
No.
Steve, I'll send it to you. It's fine. You need to know. You should be aware of it. My buddy actually said I needed to send it to him too, so I'll put you on the list of people that get it. Anyway, that's kind of fun. That's where they're sitting at right now. This is the MTG. This is why I said it's kind of like more fun to watch her out. But again, we see that official power is not powerful, and so your best option is to get out and then snipe from the outside, because God forbid you actually wield the power when you have it. Should we do another Major Garrett, by the way? Go ahead, if you have a final thought, by all means. But
I mean, with Major Garrett, my final thought is it would be hysterical for him to be conscripted into military service and have to be non-commissioned, enlisted, so that
Sergeant Major. Sergeant Major Garrett. That's kind of funny. Yeah, I don't think you should name your children military ranks. I'll just go on record with that right now up front. So here's the other kind of things. I mentioned that we're going to talk about the indictment of Raul Castro. It's not a big deal, folks, and the reason why it led the show, but why it's going to be at the end, is because a 94-year-old man in not America was indicted by our DOJ. And unless we decide to do a Venezuela-style invasion to go get him, or we decide to do a long-term protracted Iran war, which will clearly get held up and no War Powers Act will be passed, then he's probably safe at 94. I don't even know if that he survives the trip of being like an extraordinary rendition by U.S. forces. Nor is it worth our time.
Safe. I saw some comments by Rick Scott, my senator here in Florida recently, that America is in no way creeping towards some sort of kinetic operation in Cuba, and the barometer for that is that Lindsey Graham has not come out and said it. So he is the official spokesperson of how much warheads go onto foreheads.
So he did say that we were going to do that soon. Cuba, watch out. Then Cuba's next. Actually, he said Turkey first, and maybe then Cuba's on the list. The problem is Fox News is saber rattling, but probably the bigger piece of what I've seen across the news cycle in the last 2 days is this interesting recognition. It's already been going on, but a recognition and a conflation. You mentioned it earlier. Anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. But more importantly, I think that anti-Semitism, which is broadly speaking, if you don't like Israel, that means you're also really mean and you hate Jews, which I don't think is true. But it's the same truth that the Republican Party is conservative. It's about the same. It's got about the same relationship with those two. The real problem is that 2026 anti-Semitism is the 2020 version of racism. You're racist, which means people who don't do things we like. I read this quote. It was attributed to a Holocaust survivor. Steve, I don't know if it's real or not, so I'll just say that this is probably as real as, like, believe everything you read on the internet, Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln,
This is probably as real, but this guy said something to the effect of, it used to be that people who hated Jews were called anti-Semites, and now it's people that Jews hate are called anti-Semites. That's pretty dark.
Nothing but scar tissue. Effectively, you just repeat it over and over again until people say, you know what? Fine, I'm going to get called it anyway.
That's right.
So I might as well just engage in it if it puts forward some sort of policy that I like, which is really what the American people were expecting from a Donald Trump, the most famous victim of government weaponization in the history of the country. He would come in and be like, you know what, New York Times, call me a despot, call me a fascist dictator, call me literally Hitler. I'm going to go do these things because I don't care what you call me. And on the subject of, of if you're against Israel on a policy, which is a geopolitical, it is a country that you somehow can't criticize because you're against Jews for some reason. I mean, let's just insert some other country.
Don't they always try to tout too? Don't they always tout that there are Muslims and Christians that are also in Israel regularly? But apparently it's a one-to-one.
I mean, they're singing happy songs together. Like, the biggest Muslim country in the world is Indonesia. So you're telling me if I criticize Indonesia, then I'm Islamophobic?
I'm for that, by the way. I'm fine with you being those things. I don't care what happens in Indonesia. I wish nothing good for them and nothing bad for them. I'm completely agnostic about Indonesia. So maybe, what if you're agnostic about, or what's the word if you're apathetic? Like, I'm aggressively apathetic about countries that are not my own. We should have a name for that. I think it's bacon cheeseburger nationalism.
America only? Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, this conflation of these terms is quite interesting to watch. And so Major Garrett, in a sort of like outraged Asian lesbian moment, brought on, I think her name is Jackie Rosen. It's Senator Rosen from Nevada. Because when I think about Nevada, I think about people who live in the desert, people who are kind of rugged, people who are escaping California tyranny, kind of want to be on their own, like lower tax base, weird sort of freewheeling libertarian ideas on gambling and prostitution, stuff like that. And I think a Jewish lady representative should probably be the one in charge there, and she should also condemn anti-Semitism. Here's Major Garrett teeing up in the same way that I watched Ed O'Keefe do the same thing on CBS. Are you an anti-Semite? Let's call Tom Massie's very innocent joke about looking for his opponent in Tel Aviv after they spent $20 million to unseat him in a primary, in the most expensive House primary ever. You can't talk about it, apparently. Again, I think this is the new version of screaming racist at people, and I don't think it's going to go with the way anybody thinks.
In Congressman Thomas Massie's concession speech last night, he made something that he thought was a joke about AIPAC. AIPAC is the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, and its financial backing of his opponent, Ed Galrein's campaign. Listen.
I would have come out sooner, but I had to call my opponent and concede, and it took a while to find Ed Galrein in Tel Aviv.
Nevada Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen joins us now. She just introduced legislation with Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma to strengthen federal efforts to fight anti-Semitism. Senator, I'm glad to have you with us. Evaluate what you just heard from Thomas Massie on your own personal anti-Semitism scale.
Well, I can tell you, first of all, thank you for having me, and thank you for highlighting this, because it doesn't matter whether the comments come from the left, the right, or the center. These are just subtle ways, dog whistles of anti-Semitism. We see it every day, and what that does is give a permission structure for people to be more and more anti-Semitic, increase that hateful speech, and we see it turn to violence every single day. According to the ADL, over the last few years, particularly since October 7th, domestic violent extremism in the form of anti-Semitism has risen exponentially, part of the big reason for the bill that James Lankford and I introduced just yesterday.
How about Maureen Galindo, Texas 35th Congressional District? She is getting quite a bit of attention today, and there are some Democrats saying that she's being propped up by Republicans, but nevertheless, she said, among other things, that if she were to be elected to Congress, she would push for an ICE facility, quote, to be a prison for American Zionists.
Again, it doesn't matter where it comes from. This is horrific speech. It should be condemned by everyone and propped up by no one. And so, again, I don't care left, right, or center. We cannot be part of supporting anyone with this hateful rhetoric, and certainly not our opposing parties.
Listen, when you heard Tom Massie say that they were looking for his opponent in Tel Aviv, what that was, Steve, and I'm going to restate it for you in case you didn't understand, that was a permission structure given to you so that you could say hateful things. Isn't that how you took it?
No.
Why not, Steve? What was the permission structure that you had so that you could say hateful things in America out of curiosity, if such a thing existed?
The First Amendment.
How dare you? How dare you? You went to the dusty document? Why would you do that? Why would you think that you have a right to say hateful things in America? Who told you that?
I mean, people like Grover Cleveland.
He was a fascist, wasn't he? A Nazi?
It's, you know, we're told reliably by Daniel Bongino, it's a republic, so you can say whatever you want.
It's a constitutional republic, allegedly. By the way, I saw... I block people on social media now that post pictures of Ryan Matta standing next to Tom Massie as though that's a flex because he's wearing a shirt that says American Reich. Do you know what the word Reich means?
Right.
It means dwelling. It means empire. It means domain. So wearing a shirt that says American domain or the American empire is offensive. And in order to prove that that actually makes Ryan Matta a Nazi, Ryan Matta is not a Nazi. He's a shitposting goofball. And I tell him all the time that sometimes he's retarded and sometimes he's not. And so when I go and I look at the American Reich, which is a clothing company, and they're not a politics company, they're a clothing company. They sell like kitschy, I don't know, meme merch, essentially, right? You're going to be shocked to find that the American Reich not only markets their hoodies and their t-shirts and their stickers to like white guys and white girls, but also Asian women and black dudes and Hispanic chicks and guys who have Middle Eastern features. It's literally you scroll through their website and it's like, oh, you'd expect to find a bunch of Aryan blue-eyed Steve Friend looking guys or Seraphins with blue eyes and dark beards or blonde hair like my kids. No, it turns out there's like black people and Asian people, and they're just trying to sell it because they're like, hey, isn't America great? Wouldn't the American domain be something that the American empire or the American, realm be something that all Americans would be like, yeah, we are in the American realm. We support America. I thought that's what it was about. Turns out that makes you a Nazi. God forbid.
Well, at the risk of having to explain a joke and ergo not making it funny anymore.
It's not funny.
I'm just going to do it. And let's, again, insert something else right here. If you had a candidate in a concession speech who having lost to an opponent who got $20 million from Planned Parenthood, say, well, I had a hard time finding him because he was in the baby kill mill, then that's the exact same thing. You're just alluding to where the money came from. And if there's any anti-Semitism, and we've covered down, it's not anti-Semitic to criticize a nation state. It's just not. And if the actual anti-Semitism would be Major Garrett or whoever his producer is saying, you know what, give me a Jewish representative on here. I need to get a Jew on here to say exactly what we want, because that's stereotyping. That's anti-Semitic.
All those anti-Semites. I was just showing you how many anti-Semites are out there cheering for Massie. That was the Massie Not Victory Party. Of course, there were about 20 people that were all over the age of 65 who came for the early bird special that cheered on Ed Gilrain, Galrain, unclear what his name is. Since you brought up abortion, and we might as well talk about it, this is the lead story for NPR. If anybody thought that the NPR types were not doing NPR, they're still doing NPR, and they're letting you know
but still trying.
It doesn't slow down the machine. Listen, transgender people in Nigeria are the prominent and most important citizens of Nigeria, as you probably well know. And also the number one story this morning when I went there, as voters prioritize the cost of living, a focus on abortion evolves in midterm elections. That's the headline. And there's a lady holding up the abortion pill with her satanically painted nails. I remember seeing the abortion people and the pro-death people outside the Supreme Court, and it was one of the more troubling things I've ever seen, Steve, in D.C. A lady out there doing like cry. She was standing around. She's pregnant. She was chubby, but she was pregnant. and she said, "Hail Satan" a couple of times. And like even the people around her were like, maybe not. Maybe not that. Maybe when you start playing with the satanic power to try to own the Christians, it's probably not the win. In the last 2 federal election cycles, since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, say Dobbs, say its name. I just want to mess with them. Democrats have made reproductive rights a key part of their pitch to voters. That's a hell of a claim, to be fair.
Reproductive rights. The language is so rich.
Their message has dominated the airwaves in 2022 and 2024 elections, and Democrats in the House and the Senate races spent more money on campaign ads mentioning abortion than any other issue, according to data from AdImpact. Now, that statement alone is enough for anybody who's like me, who looks at Smithers and says, you disgust me, and there's nothing conservative about the positions you hold, and you do not have a conservative party, and I am not part of your party. It also means that I'm so far away from these people that I'm never going to do the Nick Fuentes where it's like, go vote for a Democrat. It's like, no, I don't actively assign myself to evil, but I also don't passively agree to the lesser evil. That's why I just don't think any of this stuff works. Anyway, just reading that stuff was pretty crazy. And I didn't want people to think that people on the left had run away from the idea that abortion is the most important issue and being able to kill your baby wasn't super important. It clearly is super important based on the money spent in their ads.
Absolutely. It's the pivotal issue for them forever. The way that they play the linguistic games where they've gone from infanticide and baby murder to say, well, it's termination, but the Terminator is the bad guy in the movie, so let's call it abortion, like the mission never happened. And then we go from pro-life to pro-choice because everybody has to be pro something to now you're just anti-choice. You're anti-reproductive rights. You're anti-reproductive justice. They're always inserting and progressing the language that they want for this. Ultimately, though, if you want to go to the Hail Satan level where that crazy woman was at, it has to be Kamala Harris. What's your body count? I mean, it's just a medical procedure, clump of cells. How many times have you gone in? And does anybody on the Republican side, other than Ryan Matta, have the balls to ask that question?
Matta probably would. This is what's really interesting about this article is that they're actually sort of sad. I'll say that that's the editorial focus of this particular piece, but they're lamenting the reduction in putting abortion up front in 2026. And in doing so, they said since January, the beginning of this year, candidates have spent almost 4 times less on campaign ads about abortion. Not none, by the way, just 4 times less, which means there's still a substantial amount of advertisement as compared to the same period in 2024. This underscores, Steve Friend, a broader shift in attention within the party ahead of the midterms elections as voters consistently rank cost of living at the highest end of concern.
Like always?
I don't know. The cost of living
are they
is the
just
issue.
more aware that they had no self-awareness in 2024 or just a tremendous lack of it because they said, we're going to win the presidency by talking about let's murder all the babies all the time when people were saying, hey, I can't afford beef anymore. Like that resonated more with the American people. And yet here we are today, 2 years later, and the Republicans are out there saying like, things have never been better. You're just stupid if you're not looking at the Dow.
It's a bold move. I don't think it goes the way that they think it does. I'm trying to pull up this graph up here, which was the head of, this was the first piece. I think, there we got it. This was the graph for Memorial Day driving will be more expensive this year. By the way, if you're listening right now and you're looking for me on Monday, I think we're going to take the day off on Monday. I think I'm going to do family stuff and I'm going to honor the fallen of this country who gave their lives for something that we all would have agreed was a good thing. I shared this with someone the other day and they had never heard it. But when I say that the country I was born in would invade the country I live in, that doesn't mean that there's been a huge shift. But my understanding of what we thought we were in the 1980s and the early 1990s is dramatically different than what we think we are today. And the number of people that are just like, are we an occupied nation? Whose bidding are we doing as a country? I very aggressively and like I poignantly remember being able to take someone to go get a meal and a gas tank full on $20. Like that was a real thing when I drove an 88 Toyota Celica GT with the flip up shitty headlights that was in red and the paint job was starting to peel a little bit in the early 90s or the mid 90s. Like I remember that. It was less than $1 a gallon. I could fill up the tank and I could get something to eat for a $3 value meal. That's kind of sad to know that a value meal now is like $8 or $9 or $10. If I go to In-N-Out, it's $50 if not everybody gets everything.
You could, I mean, for $20, you could take a date out and you could get an appetizer as well. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. We're not that old.
I think you could still do. Can you still do that at Chili's?
Well, no, you got to go to TGI Fridays because they have the appetizer / dessert.
All right, here is. Let me quickly plug our channels. So like on Rumble, like on YouTube. You may hear an ad on the audio platforms now from Spotify. Check us out at KyleSeraphinShow.com over on that one. Steve, I got a video, and this stays in that line. There's apparently a new structure that allows you to be a hater. It's not about abortion. It's not about affordability. It's still like kind of if you listen to Tom Massie and you're willing to make a joke. By the way, my Instagram Reels, which I have Instagram and I sort of hate it, but it is entertaining if you start flipping through and you see what the algorithm wants to feed you. Did I explain this to you? The algorithmic funniness of what I get on Instagram?
Is it just girls that are flashing the pedal
Not anymore.
the wares?
No. Now it's all machine guns. It's all people shooting.
For you, it's guns and pedal wares.
It used to be women in bikinis. Like when I first turned it on, it was like, oh, you're a male. You must want to see a bunch of women in skin. And it was like, I don't want to open this up. I have kids. Like this is like, it's an awkward app for me to open. So what's funny is my wife has a friend who's Armenian. And she has some pretty advanced ideas about suchus. And so she sends like all these like funny reels over to my wife, and my wife can't always open them because she doesn't have Instagram. So she'll send them over to me. So then I open them, and then I usually laugh because they're usually really inappropriate jokes, but they're still like, they're jokes. And so you read that, and then the Instagram's like, oh, you like that? Is that what you like? Let me give you some good ones, And so then it starts feeding me like nothing but nonstop, like what would be considered to be anti-Semitic jokes, but they're actually funny. And so I want to live in the country that has humor. Apparently, we don't live in that country. Here is how unfunny and how like serious we have to be. Now, before we get into this clip, this is Scott Jennings. You know who that is?
Yeah. The lone Republican at the table in CNN.
Right, but never will he part from the official position about Zionism.
He's a Mitch McConnell Republican. Of course not. Perish a thought.
So here he is. I didn't realize this, but he's also got his show on Salem. And Salem is...
Which is affiliated with Israel.
Salem is basically a foreign agent at this point. Like Salem has the chief...
CEO is a FARA agent, yes.
Yes, not the CEO, he's actually the chief strategy officer. So the C-suite, in the C-suite of Salem Media is a foreign registered Israeli agent. Salem Media regularly does live broadcasts from Israel and has a long-term partnership with the International Coalition or the International, what is it? The International Movement for the Friendship of Christians and Jews, or whatever the hell that weird thing is that we've played the super funny, like, will you give money for an old Jew?
Stuff, to be honest.
It's super weird. Okay, so you've got all that. So you've got Jennings going on. Watch you need to watch this, people. So check us out over on Spotify. Watch the faces of not Scott Jennings as they pan around the table, and everyone's like, it looks like someone's making some children eat their broccoli. Okay, tell me I'm wrong. Here's Scott Jennings. He's very upset about the deplorable conduct of Tom Massie. This is why you're going to get a bunch of people that are be like, hey, you're going to call me anti-Semitic and I'm not going to care. It's only going to get worse from here. And then I've got a joke for us because we need a joke at this point.
Well, it was the most expensive House primary in U.S. history, and the president made it a priority to get rid of Thomas Massie, and he succeeded because Massie had, frankly, become an opponent of the president inside of the party, and you just can't do that. Massie used to, reliably vote with the Republicans. That number had been falling over time. This is one of the most conservative districts in the country. It's certainly a conservative area of Kentucky. They gave Donald Trump a massive victory in 2024, and they expect the Republican congressman who represents them to be part of the team. The two big issues in the race that were in most of the advertising had to do with tax cuts and immigration, and Massie was against Trump on both of his big border security and tax cut bills. And so they said, look, we can get a Republican congressman that'll be part of the team and support the president. That campaign worked. I just want to also add one other thing.
Here it comes.
Thomas Massie tonight in his concession speech said something despicable, anti-Semitic, nasty, gutter politics, right at the end. What a way to go out. He said, I would have called Ed Galrein, but I had to find him in Tel Aviv. There was an undercurrent of anti-Semitism in this race on the Massie side. There's been an undercurrent of it in his career, unfortunately, and it really came out in an ugly way tonight. And I think it needs to be stated, acknowledged, and condemned because it was pretty despicable.
Are you anti-Semitic?
They're trying to tell you that it's anti-Semitic for me to expose the fact that the Republican-Jewish coalition has spent millions of dollars in this race, that a dual citizen, Miriam Adelson, who even Trump says is more loyal to Israel than the United States, has spent millions of dollars in this race. Those are mere facts. And it's really...
It's a yes or no. Are you anti-Semitic or not?
Oh, hell no.
Okay.
I'm hell no anti-Semitic. But here's the danger that AIPAC runs. They've been too cute by a half. They've tried to get Mike Johnson, and he's willingly done this, conflate in resolutions on the House floor that anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. Or even worse yet, that if you don't support Benjamin Netanyahu's war in Gaza, then you're anti-Semitic. That's absolutely false, and it does Jewish Americans a big disfavor to equate the two.
So we're watching this happen in real time, where people are making this conflation. Again, I think it's as detestable as Republicans claiming that they're the conservative party, which means you have no other choice but to agree with them if you're a conservative. And the answer is, well, we could stay home because we don't believe you. This is the same sort of argument. They're saying if you disagree with something that Israel does, which is not America. And again, I think objectively, Steve, there's a thing called AIPAC. I played their video 2 days ago so people could see what it is that they say that they are. And they essentially say, we make agreeing with Israel good American politics. In other words, they punish people financially if you get on the wrong side of it. Imagine the American Chinese Political Action Committee, funded by totally former CCP members who are now American citizens, which, by the way, you can buy American citizenship with the gold card in Trump's world. Can you not buy an American, access to America with $5 million on the gold card? How many could they buy? And then you can give as much money as you want. If you have dual citizens throwing money in, you could have a Chinese party member who becomes an American because we take their money, and then they can throw as much CCP money as they want. Is that a problem?
Well, it's a problem across the board, but because it's not this one unique country for
we
whatever
have a carve
the
out
reason
where
is.
these people are allowed to, like one group is. And if one group gets treated special, here's what I have a real problem with, because I think that AIPAC and the whatever it is, the American Jewish Coalition or the Jewish Congressional Coalition or whatever.
Jewish Coalition.
Yeah, whatever.
Like that, yeah.
There were 3 different groups that Tom Massie named previously in that interview, and they all gave a bunch of money. And I think they're going to actually get their way. Here's the thing. I think they're going to aggressively convince a bunch of Americans that because you continue to tell me, in the same way that if you said, Seraphin, you're racist, and I'd be like, why is that? And they're like, well, you've read some crime statistics and pointed out that, a certain ethnic group, like 50% of the homicides in America come from black people. And I go, yeah, I also mentioned that those black people are killing other black people primarily. And I think that's pretty atrocious. I would not like that. If I was black, I'd be upset about that. If I lived in a place where that was happening and I was a black person, I'd be more worried about that. I think you're going to convince me. In the same way, if I'm racist because I just say things that are true, or I say things that are factually backed by the stats, if we're anti-Semitic for simply saying there's a lot of money being floated in from foreign sources or people who have a foreign allegiance, I'll call them like foreign-leaning groups. If that makes me anti-Semitic, what happens when I say fine? What happens when I say fine? Okay, I agree to your redefinition. I will now allow you to conflate those two things. And now not only do I not care about Israel aggressively, I just don't. Now I don't care what anyone who's Jewish says. Just like you want me to just discount the opinion of someone because they're Jewish? Because that's what you're pushing towards. You're pushing towards, you're going to align them together and I'm going to go fine. Then all of you can piss off because I don't care.
Well, I mean, taking it out of like a racism or an one particular religion sort of category, let's just do the apples to apples comparison with coronavirus. Are you against putting a face diaper on?
Yes.
Do you not want to inject a experimental gene juice clot shot in your arm? You're anti-science. You're against the science.
Yeah, I am now. Right, exactly.
So
and
now I'm against all medicine. I haven't been in a doctor's office in over half a decade. Probably to my short-term gain benefit, but long-term, like body parts are just going to fall off when I'm at my 8th decade because I'm just not going to go.
You have told me what I am enough times that I will accept that now because it's not worth fighting you on it because apparently it's really important to you. And it's like, okay, fine. Guess where that leaves me? That leaves me as your enemy. You've painted me. I told you that I was agnostic. I told you that I was apathetic. I am. I don't care if Israel does things like, and I'm not paying for it, then great. And if Israel doesn't do things, and like, I don't care either. I'm not super invested in what goes on in Gaza. I'm not one of these people that's screaming about genocide because like there's bad things that happen all over the world. I'm far less upset than Tucker Carlson is, who paints himself as somebody who's very concerned about children in Gaza being killed. I'm like, okay, fine. There are scumbags in Hamas, no question about it. There are scumbags in Hezbollah, in Lebanon. Like there's bad Islamic terrorist groups, sure. Like, and if somebody wants to deal with them in their own space, that's fine. If they were in Mexico and we had to send, special operations teams down there to deal with them, I'd be okay with that. It's like, and if anybody complained about it, I'd go piss off. We're America. We defend the things that are close to us. If you tell me that I have to care about something that I'm not going to care about, eventually I'm going to agree with you. Yeah, I don't care about, and I'm going to start actively wishing bad things about you because you're being a dick. Mm-hmm. You've created a whole group of people who used to not care. There was this idea during COVID, and this is where I think the psyop has shifted, and not for the good, by the way, for anybody. There was this idea that we were going to see urban versus rural, right? It was going to be the urban liberals versus the rural conservatives, and that's what America, like the Civil War split, was going to look like, because that's where the breakdown happened aggressively during COVID. Like the further away you were from an urban core, the less you wanted to live under an urban core, which means don't tell me what to do. And we kind of thought that. I think the split in America is going to be the people who just want to be left alone to live as Americans, as you say, to do America, to live freely. And it's going to be against the people who cannot leave well enough alone. And they're like, not only do you have to not be, you have to be in favor of the things we say, because we said it, and it will define you to be a bad person otherwise. So many people are like, yeah, fuck you, man. I don't care. I'm anti-science. I'm anti-vaccine. I'm anti-whatever it is you just said I was. I'm anti-Israel. I'm anti all those things only because you said that I was, and I'm not going to fight you anymore. If that's how you're going to define me, here I am. So be it. Now what? Now we get to the like, come at me, bro phase.
Yeah, exactly. And we're rapidly approaching that. And just keep with the metaphor with coronavirus. I mean, it was, hey, let's be polite. Everybody can do what they think is in their best interest. They can wear the mask. And then it was, well, no, you have to put it on there. And look, you don't want to be hostile to somebody if you don't have to be. But then I'm like, you know what? They're calling me anti-science. They're saying I want to kill grandma. So I'm just going to be nasty to them. Well, what's the logical next step? Well, now I'm hoping that they come and confront me, because then I'm going to get really aggressive.
Yeah, you took something that was an intellectual exercise that it was like, well, it's not my country, it's not my politics, and it's not my concern. So I don't really have a strong feeling one way or another. I really am not interested. I'm not anti or pro, I'm not interested. And then you told me that I have to be interested. And you said if I'm not interested, then I'm a bad person. And I'm like, what? You just made a moral judgment about me telling you that it's not something I care about. I haven't looked into it enough for me to give a shit. Oh, I have to give a shit? Fine. I'm whatever the opposite of you are. That's my position. My position is go screw yourself, man. That's where I sit. And here's what's crazy. I listened to this Tucker Carlson bit yesterday, and he went through his rationale for what he thinks happened to Donald Trump. And something clearly happened to Donald Trump. And it could have been a lot of things. He's like, did Donald Trump do like a sleeper cell move on us where he was secretly, like this Zionist guy or whatever else? And he's like, I don't think Donald Trump has the personal discipline to not say what he thinks. So I don't think that was it. He goes, what happens? And he tied it back to a time period, because for the first 6 months, we got those court cases like we're dealing with right now. And they are now coming to a head at the Supreme Court, where they were like, America first, no birthright citizenship. Let's get rid of the deep state. Let's get rid of people who cannot be removed by the president. We better challenge that and make sure the president has the ability to remove executive boards. All the things that Americans were like, hell yeah. Like, that's what we're about. They just created a slush fund for January 6th, which, by the way, it's the one thing that Republicans have united against the Donald Trump administration. And it's because it's January 6th, which that's a show in and of itself, but we'll briefly touch on that. But what's crazy to me is he lined it all up with Tom Massie committing the mortal sin of releasing the Epstein files. And for anybody that's crying, like, how come you didn't cry about it under Biden? There was an active investigation. The FBI could hide behind it forever, and they have, which means they hid the intelligence community, CIA, and any other domestic partners. And suddenly, the Trump administration, against all odds, closed that investigation with an Axios memo in July of last year, and that launched a freaking firestorm. And 3 days later, when they put the Epstein Transparency Act out there, suddenly Massie is now public enemy number one. And the argument is that theoretically that has nothing to do with anything. And I don't think it holds. I don't think it holds.
I think it is connected to a lot, because even if we just take a step back from Epstein specifically, like how much would your life, my life, anybody in your audience's life really be changed if they knew the people that were on the Epstein client list? Not really.
No, we assume they're corrupt already. That's the crazy thing.
The question was, do we have a two-tiered system of justice? That needs to be fleshed out by the dude who's the most famous example of weaponized government in the history of the country.
Right. And then instead what he did is he argued in favor of FISA.
Yeah. Well, he was so magnanimous that he was willing to give up his rights and yours. Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate that. So listen, I always know when I see the mouthpiece resist aggressively. God forbid you say anything about Epstein. This is Brian, I think his name is Brian Taylor Cohen. I follow him on X because he doesn't agree, like he's a Democrat and he's a Democrat political commentator. So I'm like, what are they saying? When he's out there saying, like, I'm not a big Massie fan. I saw a bunch of people that are Democrats go, I'm not really a big Massie fan, but it's pretty awful if the president goes out and says we're going to get rid of somebody and it looks like it's over the Epstein files. That seems really problematic. And then watch the reaction of these two blonde ladies, or the I guess one's blonde and one's something else. Watch these ladies resist his characterization as though they know where the rail is and they can't touch it. It's electric.
I think it's interesting that in none of the lead up to what you're discussing now with Thomas Massie, did anybody name the number one thing that caused Donald Trump to push out Massie in the first place, and that was his support, Massie's support for the Epstein files. That's why this is all happening. That's why Donald Trump turned on him, which is especially ironic given the fact that Trump and all of his administration officials were falling over themselves to demand the release of the Epstein files when they were just on the campaign. But as soon as it became clear that Trump was implicated in those files, that his name was listed in those files, God knows how many times, then all of a sudden they wanted Massie out.
Brian, we all know that President Trump signed legislation to release millions of Epstein documents, and he is.
Brian, let me straighten you out right here. Like, we all know, we're going to just assume the accuracy. Here we go. We'll finish out for a second. I'll come to you, Steve.
Not implicated criminally in any of this.
3.5 million files they refused to release.
In any of this. So for you to imply that there are crimes committed is completely dishonest. Ashley, your response to that.
So then why don't they release the other 3.5 million files?
That's not why President Trump went after Thomas Massie, as Ashley eloquently pointed out. But Ashley, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that. I mean, Massie's been a problem for a long, long time. I mean, obviously, this is his 8th term. I mean, he doesn't vote with us ever. So I understand your talking point in regards to the Epstein files on the Democrat side, but that has nothing to do.
Massie doesn't vote with us ever.
So that's other than like the 97% of the time.
Right. But in the last year, it's been very upsetting because he released the Epstein files. Anyway, listen, you can believe that or not believe that. That was the conclusion that Tucker Carlson came to as being one of the major pieces of it. And as he pointed out, Jeffrey Epstein went into an American-owned, American government penitentiary and then was murdered, most likely. From everything we can see, it doesn't look like it was a clear-cut case. There's too many questions. People are not satisfied with the answer. And Daniel Bongina saying, he killed himself with the barrel of a gun off camera. Nobody believes that.
And let's not brush over the one thing that everybody forgot about with Epstein. He was a victim of weaponized government, as deplorable and despicable and evil
this
as
was
that
covered
man
by
was.
Tucker yesterday, 100%. He
was
a tool
convicted of the crime, double jeopardy attached, and because he got a sweetheart deal from a prosecutor who was part of the Trump number 1.0 administration, and the media was like, oh, we got one. We got a news cycle. We can say that this pedophile got a sweetheart deal by somebody who's a principal within Donald Trump's government. Let's run with it. And then it was like, Bill Clinton's on the list. What are we going to do now? What are we going to do now? But Epstein was already convicted. He was already served his sentence. And then the feds came in and were like, no, the Constitution's a dead letter, so we're just going to charge him with the crime.
They pulled him out of a private aircraft.
I guess makes me evil.
Well, Tucker Carlson said the same thing last night. He's like, look, you don't have to like the guy. He seems like he was an atrocious and evil human being. And yet, what did they do? They went after him for the same things that they had already gone after him for in the state. And they said, well, this is federal, so it's different. So they were trying to make a name for themselves. But he was a guy who obviously worked in a system that allowed certain access to people and power and lifestyle and so on and all the things that he did. And that same system came and ate him later, like it always does, which is why we've been arguing for de-weaponization. And nobody can argue to me, not in any convincing way, that they've released all the salient Epstein files because a huge chunk of them have to be counterintelligence files. They have to be. It's non-negotiable to anybody that knows anything about the way the FBI works. It's non-negotiable for anybody that understands what counterintelligence investigations are to say that the FBI does not have significant counterintelligence, if nothing else, to protect him against being exploited by foreign intel services. There are cases that are not being touched because everything only has to do with the prosecution for trafficking. And they have nothing to do with the foreign state intelligence services involved, at the minimum Israel, but probably others as well. There's no question he would not have been a target. And so there would have been a lot of information that should be released that has not been. By the way, I've got a great piece of lighthearted stuff about this. It's a plan to fix the problem. I'll let you respond first, and then I want to give you a solution because I hate not having a solution, finding out that our American politicians don't work for America.
I'm just really grateful that the Republican Party is really focused in on having principles. When you had Mike Johnson, who was going to vote against the Epstein Transparency Act because Donald Trump told him to vote against the Epstein Transparency Act, until Thomas Massie went on essentially a kamikaze mission for his own political career and said that this is more important than anything else. And it galvanized public appetite for transparency so that Donald Trump could sign off on it. And then the Republicans wound up approving the Epstein Transparency Act, which the Department of Justice was out of compliance with because the status quo is the status quo. It's undefeated.
Yeah, that's true. Let's figure out, let's do a solution. Okay. This is, we're coming towards maybe the tail end of the program here. And I don't want this to take away from our palate cleanser, which should probably be something about retard maxing. Because it's Friday. But let's see if there's a solution to this problem. And I think we may have landed upon it. I think it actually has presented itself to us in the form of something kind of funny.
Why the fuck is the government allowed to shut down? That feels like that shouldn't be allowed. Right? They should have taken care of that in like 1789. Amendment 1, speech. Amendment 2, guns. Amendment 3, do your fucking job. What are you talking about? Imagine doing that at your place of work. Just like, I hate half the people here, fucking shut it down. These motherfuckers forgot that they work for us. That's the problem. And I have a plan to get them back as the American people. Here's my plan. It's pretty simple. I think we, as the American people, need to buy an island off the U.S. Virgin Islands. And on this island, this is key, we host a human trafficking sex ring where we slowly capture politicians from both sides and then we blackmail them into working for the American people. That's my plan. Work for Israel, why don't we give it a shot? I just get shot in the neck. I'm joking, obviously. I love Israel and everything about it.
Solid coming from a comedian who's got the skullet rocking.
My wife is like, I don't want to listen to advice about the U.S. government from a man who looks like that. But also, there was a lot packed in there. That was essentially Tucker's opening monologue for 25 minutes. It was just done in a comedic fashion, pointing out some kind of uncomfortable things. If only we could blackmail them into working for us. I don't hate that plan, man. I gotta be real with you.
I think we need some outside the box thinking when it comes to incentivizing the right sort of people to get into positions of authority and power. And there's no perfect solution, but clearly the course we're on is crashing into the side of a mountain. So maybe we should reevaluate what we're doing, even if it's like, hey, let's offer $1 million a year to congressmen, but it has to be conditional on they don't shut down the government And that way you'd maybe get some non-retard maxers in there who are not interested in talking to their phone and saying like, hello, everybody, thanks for sending me here, and actually doing the damn job. Like, that's something that we could take up. It's a drop in the ocean to pay $435 million as opposed to $7 trillion, as long as we don't
We could take it straight out of the $3.8 billion we send over to Israel if we were so inclined. We could buy off our own politicians, you think?
Or the We the People 1776 fund that'll be never getting off the ground.
More on that in 1 second. That's very much offended the both sides of the aisle, it turns out, and CBS was covering that pretty aggressively. This is a lady, I think, what was her last name? I looked her up earlier. Her name is, I don't have it in front of me. Her name is Catherine, I think Fitts, Fitts. She doesn't seem to think we're voting our way out of it. She was in the George H.W. Bush administration. That's scary when an old lady from the first Bush era thinks we're not voting our way out. It kind of tells me we're not voting our way out. She thinks it's going to be a lot more gentle. Maybe it will be. Maybe she's correct. This is just an interesting thing. This is what she thought about Tom Massie's primary. And by the way, she doesn't believe the numbers either, it turns out. And she seems like a pretty sentient elder stateswoman.
If you look at Massie's results, it says to me, first of all, I'm shocked he didn't win. And the question was it a fair election? And the answer is, I doubt it. But if you look at what happened, you literally had a small handful of billionaires literally forcing, putting up millions and millions of dollars. This is the single most expensive congressional campaign in the history of the country. But it was basically a handful of billionaires against the people of Kentucky. And the question is, could the people of Kentucky be forced to either rig the election or vote for whoever does the most sort of dirty ads? If you look at the ads, they were so misleading, so dirty. It was extraordinary. But what I'll say in that above 65 group, has basically been trained, particularly in the South, to vote in whatever way AIPAC wants them to vote. And this.
Why can't Israel be doing some sort of, counterintelligence, information warfare like this, where they are actually doing the same type of, psychological operations in America, where they're actually trying to penetrate, communities that do share their values and get them to recognize that. I feel like this is just going to be like clipped, and I'm just going to be, somebody's going to be like, oh, here's this Zionist Jew admitting that Israel has to infiltrate, Christian conservative communities to try to pull the strings or control the world. I can just see something like this happening. But let me just give you an analogy. After the Cold War, and this happened throughout the Cold War as well by the Soviets, but after the Cold War, and Trevor Loudon really talks about this a lot, Russia began a very targeted campaign to rebuild its image after the Cold War, right? Because the Soviet was, a leftist entity that looked very, very unfavorable in the eyes of Christians and conservatives in America. And so Russia started targeting in the 90s heavily Christian conservative communities in the States and inviting them to conferences
with agents of influence,
sending liaisons, and essentially saying to them, we're on your side. Russia, we're not the same, we're not the same as we were before. We are proud Christians. We share your values, the same values that you do as Americans.
One of the things I say briefly in the book is that what we've all been up against over decades is nothing short of psychological warfare. Now, the Jewish community leadership, both in the diaspora and in Israel, doesn't think like that. It doesn't think that in order to fight psychological warfare, you have to use psychological warfare. There are plenty of people in this country who, well, not plenty, but there are some, who are experts in what's called psyops. They should be used. They can be drawn upon. These are reservoirs of talent and skill that could be used and harnessed to really make a difference. You have to have people who understand the nature and extent and dimensions of the challenge and who are prepared to buck all the conventional wisdom of all the community leaders who have led us into this appalling situation.
I think it is a good thing if Massie and the people like him and others believe that if you cross the line into anti-Semitism, Jews are going to use the power that we have openly to go for you. Because what other recourse is there? Are we just going to sit here and take it, beg for scraps, hope that nice people are nice to us? The Democratic Party is going explicitly anti-Semitic. We can see it happening. People are getting benefits, as Seth says, for being anti-Semites. That seems to be part of an appeal in primaries to the left and the party. We have to use what means there are at our disposal. And in my view, and I'm going to put it blank, that is Jewish money. There is an enormous amount of Jewish money in politics, by which I mean,
here we go,
Jewish donors, wildly disproportionate, not only charitably, but politically. And when I say charitably, I mean nobody really knows the numbers. Jews make up 2% of the population. According to some studies, Jews make up 20% of the charitable contributions made in the United States annually.
So you got a lot of money, so you can do what you want. That is John Podhoretz. His father's name was Norman, and he was sort of like he was a mover and shaker. This guy is sort of like nepotistically involved and has an ability to share his ideas because of that. But there you go.
Openly not beating the allegations and doing so in such a dangerous way where you're saying, well, we're going to do these things. And if you don't agree with what we're doing, then we're going to call you anti-Semitic, to the point where it's going to radicalize people into saying, you know what? Maybe I will be, because you're kind of an a-hole. And look, it's ridiculous to consider anything outside of the following two with Thomas Massie's loss in the primary. It's either one of two things, and they're not mutually exclusive. It could be both. It could be an influx of an enormous amount of money that came from the Israel lobby, not the Jewish money, the Israel lobby, because they're separate. We've established that. Or there was some election malfeasance. It could be and/or, but it's definitely one of those two things, because there wasn't some sort of a black swan incident where there was a corruption or some sort of a personal affair that came out at the very last second that would have galvanized the amount of votes that went through. They 2x'd the vote in an off-year election when there wasn't a stay home, stay safe sort of mail in your ballots. So it's either the money, or there was a situation where we can't rely on the vote, or it's both. That's it.
That seems pretty clear to me. Hold on, let me see if I can get this this infographic up here for you, for your claims, Mr. Friend. The claims are 2x the money, right? There we go.
2x the vote total. I think the money was.
Yeah, sorry, no, the money was way higher than that. Yeah, so 2x the vote total. So that's what that looks like. That is an increase in Massie votes by 19%. They stepped up about 7,000 and change.
What was Trump's increase in 2020? Because he upped his too because of the mail-in ballots. That would be an interesting side-by-side if you could take 2016 to 2020, Hillary in 2016, Biden in 2020. It might be something I'll have to dig into.
So in 2020, the total number of votes in that primary where they had an elevated COVID mail-in thing, the total number of votes in the Republican primary in 2020 were 85,000 in Kentucky for.
And they still exceeded it in a midterm.
By a lot, with no Trump on the ballot, with no major draw. It's pretty hard for me to believe you double the number of interested voters in that area.
What's the total registered number?
By the way, that's never happened. Just so you know, historically, that's never happened, ever. They've never done that before. So that's the highest vote total ever. This is the same people.
For a guy that can't pronounce his name.
For a guy that can't be pronounced, the same people that were crying about Joe Biden being an issue and saying that there's no way that you're going to have me believe that out of nowhere we produced 8 million extra voters. I also don't believe that you created, let's say 20,000 on the low end, but more likely 50,000 more interested voters for an off-year midterm primary. It's not real. That's not a real number that people look at and go like, well, mathematically that makes sense. Even with $20 million invested into that from the other side. because the president of the United States couldn't pronounce his name. Fact. The day before the primary, the president of the United States mispronounced the name of the guy who he was trying to get in there.
And they were willing to do everything, including and up to breaking the law by sending the Secretary of War to go and campaign violating the Hatch Act.
Hence my show. They declare war on it. I'm going to show you another thing that I think is really interesting too, because sometimes like the more things change, the more they stay the same. And this one is actually one of those really good, fun little stories. Read this little headline here, because apparently this is what gets you fired from the Republican Party.
In a rarity, Republicans stand up to Trump.
What's it for?
President Trump faced a wall of opposition from Senate GOP lawmakers, in part over his plan to create a $1.8 billion fund to reward his allies. And it's like calling him Mr. Trump. They won't say 1776. It's an absolute refusal all across the communist media.
Yeah, they don't want to say what the actual number is. Let's just be real quick here. What is the $1.8 billion fund supposed to be funding?
Anti-weaponization. So reimbursing you, trying to bring you back somewhat to a modicum of wholeness because the federal government was weaponized against you, not specific to J6.
And yet, J6 is basically the talking point that we've got Democrats digging into. That's 100% what they are. They are completely incensed that J6ers may be able to file for some compensation. Many of those people had no business being in our federal justice system. I would say that pretty clearly. Some of those people did, and they were scumbags. Apparently, Jake, someone sent me a message yesterday. It was Joe Biggs, and he was like, hey, Jake's in jail again. And I was like, who's Jake? I'm like, I have one friend named Jake, and he's not in jail. Like, I'm pretty confident he's okay. And so I was like, who's Jake, dude? And he's like, Jake Lang. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know he was out of jail. Like, I assume Jake Lang is always in jail. For anybody who wants to know, hey, what's Jake Lang up to? I assume he's in jail. That's just my guess. If you were going to ask me, that's where I'm going to lean, because he's desperately interested in dying in prison. That's like he's doing everything in his life to be able to be that. There are some people that are going to end up like that from J6, but not all of them.
Yes. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter, because ultimately what J6 reflected was how the government became interested in an outcome rather than following the process. In contrast
Crazy
to
enough.
what our expectations are. So as a result, there is a harm that was done there. I like to use the Bill Cosby example. Bill Cosby committed some atrocious acts. Then he went into a room with the prosecutor, and the prosecutor said, if you tell me what you did, I won't use it against you. So Bill Cosby did. And then the prosecutor turned right around and used it against him. And as a result, Bill Cosby walked on that. Now, who was the victim of that? The victims who didn't get to see justice because the government screwed up.
Right.
That's what it is.
Yes, 100%. What's crazy to me is the New York Times story here. In a rarity, they're celebrating that Republicans are standing up against Trump. And the interesting thing is, what is that stand up about? It's about January 6th. You know, that time when the government came together and decided no more Donald Trump. You'd think that would be problematic for him. And they decided we're all going to agree that we have to go and sacrifice 1,500, 1,800, 2,000 lives and their families for this monster, because we can't have another term of Donald Trump. And so we're going to make sure that happens. And it turns out the left side of the aisle and the right side of the aisle are all united in those people are the problem, which is why when people ask, how come the J6 pipe bomber story doesn't get more traction in the mainstream news? Because they're all part of this narrative that has to be ongoing. It has to be the story that a bunch of evil people tried to overthrow the government, because the alternative is the government overthrew the freaking will of the elected people. And we can't have that. We cannot have that at all. And Tom Massie represents another threat like that.
As I say, Tom Massie is bucked the trend on that. And the reason the Republicans are so resentful of this fund, like the Tom Tillises of the world, is because it is bringing January 6th back into some sort of a discussion. Because the left's always going to go to that. They're
love it.
Lean on. They love that. That is, I mean, that's straight into the arm injection. I mean, you're chasing the dragon for that all the time if you're a communist leftist. So, and the Republicans, that's just. It's like Kyle Seraphin. He's just too politically hot. We'd rather
we just
not
don't want to touch
about
that
the
topic.
Worst example.
They don't. Here is the fat gay Irish guy or whatever he is on CNN. I don't know why this is an American commentator on an American news. Like, this is the best you could get. I could send Steve Friend into the world to ask poignant questions in an American voice, but they'd rather have this like fat Irish guy who I think is gay do whatever this is. This is pointing out how bad, extra bad the J6ers are. I'm going to show you a couple clips about this, how people are very incensed about the slush fund.
So the number I've put in is $30 million. $21.5 million is for the wrongful imprisonment.
People who took part in January 6 are hoping for big payouts.
We endured a lot. Our lives are still not the same. So I don't know what kind of price you can put on that.
Even before the DOJ announced its so-called anti-weaponization fund this week.
How long were you in prison for?
Jail and prison, I combine those numbers, 1,075 days.
People like Brandon Fellows had already begun making claims for compensation.
What's the reaction within the wider January 6 community to this fund?
Some people are whining and saying it's not enough, and we're not even hearing numbers yet.
Fellows was sentenced on felony and misdemeanor charges for entering the Capitol on January 6.
Yeah, we went in there.
Seen here in a red beard costume, Fellows spoke to CNN's Ellie Reeve during the riot.
But they were smoking a bunch of weed in there.
The charges against him were dismissed after a pardon from President Trump. Now Fellows expects compensation.
According to ChatGPT and Grok, and also my knowledge of January 6 cases, I'm in at least the 3 to 5% upper tier for how terrible and also how strong of a case I have.
It's like surreal to me. I mean, look how angry I look.
Rachel Powell, a mom of 8 and a grandmother to 8, spent 3 years under house arrest. We interviewed her before she began her prison sentence in 2024.
I don't deserve this, and my kids don't deserve it. Like, have we not been through enough?
She was released last year after being pardoned by Trump.
What do you say to people who are outraged and say people like you don't deserve a penny?
What do you say about the people who brought on this Irish guy, this homo, to come and talk to Americans about what they should have done? You dirty, dirty people that brought in. They were smoking the weed in the Capitol, and I saw him sitting there in his beard costume. Here he is talking in the middle of a riot, and they're safely having a conversation in that riot. Because it was so violent, the riot, that nearly they died. Except they're just having a casual conversation while he's wearing a freaking beard costume and he's wearing a beanie that resembles a knight's helmet. That's how serious that was.
Yeah, and what do you say to the people who happen to be the fictional people who are saying exactly what I have? My position is on that. I mean, a little bit of editorializing by the guy there is pretty clear. Look, the amount of money that if it goes through, and it won't go through, there's not a chance that it'll happen. It's nothing will happen, trademark. It's nowhere close just to even deal with January 6th. You're talking about roughly $1 million a person. I mean, that doesn't cover the legal fees / lost wages, lost reputational damage. I mean, let's talk about weaponization against whistleblowers, right? Like, how many millions of dollars are you out from your career and prospects? I mean, it's got to be $5 to $7 million.
Exactly that. Yeah, it's about 6.5.
Yeah. So
look, I did the numbers on it. I have a spreadsheet. We ran the numbers. We had a former IRS agent run the crunch and say, this is what each paycheck would have been. This is for how long it would have been. These are the benefits that would have been tied into our retirement fund. We have the TSP, which is like a 401k. These are the medical benefit costs. And here's where you're likely to die based on actuary tables. I think I'll probably outlive 85 unless something dangerous happens to me. I've lived through all the dangerous stuff already.
Unless you go to a doctor, then you'll die right away.
Unless I go to a doctor and get a shot or something, I might die right away. Long and short, yeah, you can quantifiably see that the numbers and the lost possibilities in future are very, very, they're very countable. And it's in the millions per person. Millions. So anyway, they're outraged. Steve, as the acting attorney general, I'm going to have you put on your Todd Blanche hat or silicon mask, if you would. As the acting attorney general of the United States, aren't you mad about the possibility of paying out people who hurt police officers? That's never happened in America. There's never been a leftist organization that has advocated that people who hurt cops got paid money. That would be atrocious, right? Just hold on for your answer. Here comes your answer.
You're the nation's top law enforcement official right now. Would you be okay with people who were convicted of hurting police getting taxpayer money?
Just to be clear, people that hurt police get money all the time. Okay, there's a process where if you believe you have your rights violated, you can apply for funds, you can sue, you can file a claim, you can go to court. In some of those cases, the state, the government, the federal government settles those cases. It's abhorrent. to ever touch a law enforcement officer, which is why anytime anybody does that, and it's a federal officer, we'll prosecute them. But that's a completely different question with whether an individual is allowed to apply for a claim. Whether they'll get a claim, depends. I can't, it would not be appropriate for me to talk about absolutes, like absolutely not, under no circumstances. I mean, we can talk about hypotheticals till we're blue in the face, but that really wouldn't be fruitful.
I think that's an eminently reasonable response.
I know it.
But
everybody wants me to hate Todd Blanche. Like all the people on the right are like Todd Blanche. I'm like, every time I hear him talk, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. Like that's true.
Yeah. But it's also stated
it's political.
Knowing that the fund will expire in December of 2028 after all the legal challenges have gone over. So again, nothing will happen, and he can say things that sound really good. But look, I agree with everything that he said there.
I think so too. It's not out of line. Here's something that's really problematic. What you can't do is say the truth. I feel like this guy might find himself in a Tom Massie sort of situation. You really should not be saying that January 6th was the government staging the insurrection against the American people. What you really should not say is something close to resembling the truth, because that's how you get Steve Baker style canceled. That's how people end up dead. That's how you end up with some random guy in prison that didn't do the crime. By the way, Steve Baker's got a great piece out if you guys have not seen it. They went and walked the actual bricks that the pipe bomber walked on the night of January 5th, 2021, in the actual model of shoes that were alleged to have been used in different sizes. And it turns out, couldn't have been the right guy. We continue to kind of point out they're just chipping away at all these little spots. There's actually more evidence than that. But how about this? Don't say January 6th was a setup. You will lose Scott McFarlane. And I don't hate Scott McFarlane as much as I used to have a real animosity towards him. And then he and I have had a couple of conversations like verbally. He's a nice enough man. I should have. It's the Ryan Riley rule. Like I talked to Ryan Riley, and Ryan Riley's actually really funny. He sends me funny messages. The other day, he may or may not have sent me something about narcotics and a government official. And I was like, I don't know. Could be. That's pretty funny. Scott McFarlane is very incensed. He constantly is upset about the police officers who were beat up on January 6th. And maybe he genuinely does. I think he actually is like kind of a true believer in a really bad thing happened to cops on that day. Now, whether he loves cops every day, I don't know. But this is, you can hear how incensed the questions are if you were like, yeah, January 6th was clearly not what you think it was.
To those funds. People who assaulted police.
Look, January 6th is an issue that was made up in the first place.
Made up? Convicted of assaulting police.
Well, I know
made
that.
up, sir?
That was a staged thing from day one.
What about it?
January
The riot
6th.
was staged?
When you had police officers letting people in the building, when you had people that's not being prosecuted, Ray, forget his name, there's no excuse for that.
Your colleagues, though, your Republican colleagues ran for their life and barricaded themselves in their chamber. Do you think they were acting?
No, there was a riot there, but it was a self-made riot by members who hate Trump. It was made up, in my opinion.
I don't know if you can say that.
No, you can't speak. I mean, it's the worst event that happened in the history of the country. Worse than 9/11, the Challenger explosion, Pearl Harbor, worse than when the British took over the Capitol and burned it down, worse than any other time since Charlemagne roamed the earth.
It was almost as bad as when Obama wore that tan suit.
I mean, he never had any other controversy.
Nothing else. I love watching this. Why do we not have, this is our chat on the screen right now, why do we not have answers about what federal agencies, and I don't think they were all the FBI, what federal agencies had undercovers that were out there doing the work? I thought we were going to get this transparency. That was a big story. This was something that was immediately advertised. Do you remember how fast Kash Patel went and defended the FBI?
Immediately? I mean, that's a pretty sweet jet, man.
Yeah, I guess you love the jet. The funny thing is that like you and I have been really transparent about it from the beginning about what I think. I don't think there were a lot of FBI undercovers. I do know there were FBI agents that were in that crowd that were pro-Trump. And I know because I talked others out of going that day. You know, it's like, I was like, you're going to lose your career. That always smelled like a trap. I know that there were people that were recruited from around the country. There was a recruit or a canvas for CHSs to go and do infiltration of the so-called patriot movements and so on. So there were people there, but who the hell else had people there? Did DHS have folks there? Did the ATF have people there? Did the DEA have people there? What other undercover and or confidential human sources were wandering around there? And what were their orders? What were their marching orders? What sort of instructions did they get? We got a little sense of it, and then we've kind of walked away from that. And what it sounds like they want to do is buy them off. We'd like to buy people off for maybe $1 million a piece.
People who are in a pretty dire straits because they've been confronted
because their life has been
last
destroyed.
Decade.
Yeah, because your life is destroyed. Because most people can't handle. When I was talking to a reporter the other day about Garrett O'Boyle's story, I was like, he went for like 3 years without a paycheck. I went for 14 months without a paycheck. You've done that. It's not that easy, it turns out. Now, you guys are, you have dual income in the family, so you got some additional money coming in, and you're financially solvent because you pay attention and you keep track and not run debts. But most Americans don't do that. Most Americans owe out the eyeballs, and like they're barely making their credit card payments, which is why, I don't know, like that affordability thing that Donald Trump was pushing seemed like it was going to make it was going to really change the game. It was going to make people understand like, oh, well, like there's a American leader focusing on American stuff. We feel pretty good about that until he wasn't. It's just, it's hard to watch.
No, most Americans can't absorb a $400 charge suddenly out of nowhere, which is why affordability was 1 and 1A with illegal alien deportations when people went to the polls in November of 2024. And they were really uber excited for the first few months of the Trump Part 2 administration because they seemed to be aggressively going after those sorts of things that have an impact on your life every single day, those quality of life issues. But now we're dealing with foreign intrigue and entanglements, and the best that they can offer us is, I don't know, a ballroom that you'll never be invited to go into.
What's wrong with the ballroom, man? What are you talking about?
I mean, I think they're probably going to have to steal, tax money from us in order to fund it now because too much money went into the Kentucky 4th primary.
I think you're probably correct on that. All the donor money, it has been getting some good outcomes. Let me quickly read, folks, Rumble, YouTube, give us a like over there if you haven't. Subscribe to the channels if you have not. You may hear an ad from the Spotify people on the audio platforms. You could hear that right now. Check us out, KyleSeraphinShow.com. All good things to do. This is the New York Times. Raul Castro guided Cuba for decades. He's 94. He no longer holds any official title, but he still wields enormous power. And he's been indicted by our DOJ because we're totally not about to invade Cuba. I have some indicators that I think that may be the case on the Cuba thing. What do you think about a guy who hasn't been in power since 2018, at least in any official way? Yeah. And he's 94.
94 for a crime he allegedly committed 30 years ago, and he lives in a country that won't extradite him. So
he's a heavy vodka drinker.
Yeah, he did hang out with Barack Obama, which will give the right-leaning media, the state-sponsored mouthpieces, an opportunity to flash some photos there, feed some red meat to their viewership about Barack Obama, and then nothing will happen.
You got to read this paragraph from the New York Times right here.
Raul Castro is frail, has poor hearing and difficulty speaking, but he still attends important events and was last seen in public May 1st wearing his military uniform at an International Workers' Day parade. So he's still down for the fight for the commies.
Yeah, so get him. Okay, so here's why I think we're going to do an invasion soon enough. I think that's what's being messaged, at least. This is CBS News. U.S. intel community analyzing how Cuba might respond to a military action. Why would they be doing that? Why would that be shared with CBS? Are we trial, ballooning this thing? And the answer, I think, is yes. That seems to be the case. And my second example will be coming from Fox. The U.S. intelligence community has been exploring how Cuba might respond to an American military action. CBS learned earlier this month the U.S. intelligence community tracked Universal, a sanctioned Russian-flagged oil tanker bound for Cuba. The analysts at the Pentagon and the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the U.S. military intelligence arm, started to analyze what the Cuban response would be to an American attack on the Caribbean country. Work on developing military options for Donald Trump has begun, according to two officials with knowledge of the matter. Both requested anonymity because they're not allowed to speak about the matter, but they did speak about the matter, even though theoretically this would be a classified thing. Remember, leaks are tools of the administration. If you guys don't know that, that's something that we taught Kash Patel. My friend Kurt Suzdek explained that. Two officials are not allowed to talk about it, but they are. They're talking about it. These types of intelligence forecasts attempt not only show the immediate consequences of American action, but the chain reactions which may follow. American military planners frequently incorporate such analysis into developing options for a president to consider. What do you think about that?
All of the framing is there. For we had no other choice because we've been at war with Cuba since Fidel took over. So we're going to have to get a little bit energetic.
All right. So here's where it gets best. Opinion piece. Who's this guy? This is Douglas McKinnon. A former Pentagon official wrote a book, something about the Declaration of Independence. Very good. Okay. A terrifying fact of the Iran war is America is no longer safe from this new threat. What do you think that new threat is?
Cuba sits less than 90 miles away.
It's gotten closer. When did it get so close to us, Steve Friend? When did Cuba end up so close to America?
It's probably because of all that global warming and the seas were rising.
Doggone it. Okay. In recent discussions about the ongoing war in Iran, a former high-ranking military officer made a point that left me momentarily speechless. And now you also are speechless as you read. And that point was, quote, the UAE and our other allies in the Middle East are better protected by the U.S. air defense systems from Iran's Shahed drones than the state of Florida.
So you're telling me that it's more dire, the situation with our...
It's getting dangerous out there, Steve. The reason Florida was brought up is because of Cuba. Much in the news lately as the Trump administration, come back here, seeks to free the people of that communist nation from decades of totalitarian rule. Would this be referred to as a framing statement?
That's kind of up there with 47 years that we've been at war with Iran.
All right, these negotiations go on. The logical question regarding Cuba, which is less than 90 miles off the Florida coast, people just found out. Apparently nobody remembers the Cuban Missile Crisis. They're hoping that the new people will get there and realize, holy crap, did you know how close Cuba was to America? It's almost like it was a problem a long time ago. So here we go. The new question is, quote, has Iran or any other terrorist organization or U.S. adversary successfully placed any of its attack drones within that communist island nation? Are there WMDs down there, Steve Friend?
We don't know. We're going to have Dick Cheney suss it out with some members of the intelligence community and see if they'll go all in on it.
Okay, well, we need to. So now here's what we know. It was recently cited in a piece headlined, "The Pentagon jumps from $225 million to $55 billion on drones as cheap attacks have overwhelmed U.S. defenses. The next war will be called World War Drone." That's really good. That's a great story. I'm going to have a whole piece on that. Maybe we'll get George Hill on to talk about World War Drone. Look at this. This is also, just in case you were wondering, these are people in Israel who are hiding behind 2.5 foot tall granite wall.
While there's a stand around them?
There's other people that are standing behind the wall. On both sides of the wall, there are people. I don't know what does this wall do, out of curiosity? You've taken training on how to hide from enemy fire? I know you have. I've seen it. I've been to SWAT Basic. I know what that's about there. You have to go into the depth
I had to sign some NDAs. I can't really give away sources and methods in an ongoing sort of training scenario.
How would this save you, do you think, if you're just estimating from the photograph as people are walking up to the wall, around the wall, and milling about standing at full height? By the way, this dude is like chilling down here with some kind of a pistol on his belt. He's ready to fight back against whatever's coming from the air. These are people in Israel hiding from drone strikes and missiles during the U.S.-Israeli attacks. They're not Israeli attacks. These are U.S.-Israeli attacks, just so you know.
Yeah, and that's connected to Cuba for reasons.
As the lead paragraph of this article rightly and shockingly points out, the Pentagon is seeking roughly $55 billion to stop drones and autonomous warfare. And so maybe if there was a growing problem indeed, one that no doubt is on the mind of commanders, over 20 military bases sit in Florida within striking distance of Cuba, which, by the way, have I mentioned, is 90 miles off the coast of Florida. Yeah. Most especially, there's one in
military
Tampa.
Military bases, they don't consider any sort of external threats when they're in their near vicinity. Like, that's never occurred.
No one ever thought about that when they placed U.S. CENTCOM and U.S. SOCOM commands down there in Florida. Nobody knew that there was an enemy 90 miles away. So it's time. I think it's time. Can I tell you why I know that we didn't win and why the weaponization is really bad news, Steve? Because I just saw this story and it's not going to get a ton. We'll cover a little bit more tomorrow. On Tuesday next week. Did you see this indictment in Florida? Speaking of Florida, which is only 90 miles away from Cuba, for anybody who's worried.
Which one?
This is the indictment of a former member of Jack Smith's team.
Oh yeah.
For classified documents.
I need nature calls. You regale the audience. I'll be back in a minute.
Run. I never have lost Steve Friend. He has an iron bladder, but here it is. This is a grand jury. It says Carmen Mercedes. Oh, I should put this on the screen in some way, huh? Hold on. Let's put this on the screen. We could probably do that. Read through. Carmen Mercedes Lineberger served as a managing assistant United States attorney. That's an MAUSA. That's a head AUSA. In the Fort Pierce branch of the United States Attorney's Office, Southern District of Florida. This woman was involved in issuing reports which prohibited, Eileen Cannon issued a requirement, an order that prohibited the Justice Department, or DOJ, its officers, its agents, officials, and employees from releasing, sharing, or transmitting the report outside the Department of Justice, or otherwise releasing or sharing, conveying, sharing anyone outside of DOJ information or conclusions that the report came through with. Was issued January 21st of 2025. On September 22nd, 2025, just for a second here, audience, just remind yourselves, who was president September of 2025? Who was in charge of the DOJ? That would be a Pam Bondi and a Donald Trump, allegedly, if you believe these sort of things. Created an electronic document on her government-issued computer consisting of portions of internal DOJ electronic messages received through the DOJ email system, as well as portions of internal DOJ memorandums, including headers and footers marking for official use only, internal DOJ use only, and then compiled, this is the best part, compiled all these into a document with the file name. This is really damning. It turns out, if you save the employee handbook the way Steve Friend did, and it says employee handbook, and you take it home, maybe you're good. If you save for official use only, internal DOJ use only, and you save it under the file name chocolatecakerecipe.pdf, it kind of indicates you're trying to do something shady. Like you might be wanting to hide your chocolate cake recipe. And then she sent it from her DOJ email account to her personal Hotmail account with a subject line, and the message was chocolate cake recipe, which included the compiled document, which said chocolatecakerecipe.pdf. Oops. Again, this is under the so-called Donald Trump's DOJ. The reason I bring that up is because this question has been posed to Donald Trump of late. It was brought up, and the question was, have you gotten rid of all the DOJ people that aren't supposed to be there? And the answer most obviously has been no. That has not been the case. In December of 2025, again, under Donald Trump, okay, under Pam Bondi in December, still Pam Bondi, she accessed the electronic message that she previously received. She got something on January 16th of 2025. It was a report, the same one that we're talking about, that couldn't be disseminated. She downloaded that electronic copy of the report to her government issue computer. She altered the name of that, and she saved it as Bunt Cake Recipe. And then she renamed this file, saved it to her desktop of her government issued computer. And then again, on December 1st, she sent that thing to her Gmail account. And her Gmail account with an email. And the email was the subject line, buntcakerecipe.pdf. So she shared the bunt cake recipe, which was also the official report, which was not meant to be shared. Count 1, allegations contained in the paragraph 1 through 9 of this indictment have realleged and incorporated by reference are set forth herein. She did knowingly and willfully embezzle, steal, or convert for her own use without the authority to convey or dispose of any record or property of the Department of Justice. That seems like this is going to be a real ugly one for her. She used a DOJ internal memorandum, including officials, headers and footers marked for official use, DOJ internal use only. She renamed it and she sent it off. You think they can't? This is going to be like a cut and dry case. You want to talk about having documents you shouldn't have? This one's pretty cut and dry. And then the count 2 is going to be that she knowingly altered or concealed a record or a document. All of those things, not good. Steve Friend, a DOJ woman who was working on Jack Smith's team, apparently, that's the claim, took information home by changing the name to chocolate and bunt cake, respectively. What say you to that? Is that the way they teach you to do the information laundering?
I mean, that's some really top-notch InfoSec, OPSEC on her part. But I thought we'd already eradicated all the problem people from the DOJ. Weren't we reliably assured of that all the time for the last year and a half?
I think we were. I think we were told that. And if only I had like a little clip here about Donald Trump talking about getting rid of the deep state. Are there still deep state actors? He's like, oh, I don't think so. Somebody's been telling him that they got rid of him. Cash said that. I'm pretty sure Bondi said that. I'm pretty sure Todd Blanche said that as well. Here we go.
He suggested that there's still people in your DOJ and FBI that are waiting you out. They're waiting until your administration is over to get back to work. Do you think those people are still in the DOJ and FBI?
I hope not. Well, if they are, we're going to seek them out. We'll seek them out. We'll get rid of them. Okay? Because you have in every agency, you have scum. And certainly they did it at the FBI and DOJ. But Todd Blanche is doing a fantastic job. Cash is doing a very good job. So we will prevail.
Okay. This indictment was returned the 19th. This is the true bill that was returned 19 May. That was like 3 days ago. So it doesn't sound like they've really gotten rid of all those people.
Well, I mean,
Call me crazy.
He did say that Todd Blanche is doing fantastic and Cash is only doing pretty good. So.
Is that what he said? That checks out. Yeah, Comey's homies, when I did the episode on that, it's like we continue to have evidence of the things that I keep saying. And I'm not saying it because I'm trying to be a jerk, and I'm not saying it because I want to hurt anybody's feelings. I'm just trying to get people aware that they've already told you they're going to wait you out, and they are going to wait you out because you didn't do a complete turnaround. You didn't take the weapon away from the system. You just acted like you're in charge of it right now. And there's evidence almost every single month in some way, shape, or form, whether it be explicitly stated or coming through charges where they uncover. Remember, September of 25, they suddenly realized that the thing that I was saying about, hey, dude, your pilot was on the other team. And whose fault was that? That became my fault. Because we're out here trying to tell them the truth. It's like you didn't fix the problem. If you went after the thing you said you were going to do, which was de-weaponize government, you wouldn't have to worry about this stuff. Some of that would have had to involve dismantling some of these government agencies. And I thought that's what Mike Johnson said conservatives do.
He was interested in the principles of the Republicans, not necessarily conservatives. He's trying to conflate Republicans with conservatives.
Good.
But it's a paradigm shift in thinking, right? It's the ring of power. The temptation is there that you get into a position where you can abuse that authority or even just rightfully use it. But you have to actually think beyond the immediate future and say, well, all right, if this tool is here, there will come a time when the political pendulum swings back, that a Pharaoh who knows not Joseph will come to power because that's just the way of the world. And we do not want to have this here if we're actually interested in having a functional constitutional republic in which the government, through a social compact with the people, fulfills its mandate to protect against fraud and force and focus down on the process. The optimal thing to do is just to take the teeth out of the attack dog and avoid the temptation, and rather than just going after your political enemies because you're short-sighted and you think, well, we'll be in power forever, or, I'll have already gone on to greener pastures from here, and be definitely 100% outside the grasp of an energetic, aggressive political enemy when they get into power, like, a Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who violated the Hatch Act. He's totally going to be in the clear in 2 years.
I just keep thinking we're sitting in a space where it's pretty obvious to me that, one, we don't vote our way out of it. Two, there may be a new level of people that you've created enemies of, and it's not going to be the way that people think it is. I really don't think it's going to be the fight that people thought. People thought it was going to be left versus right. They thought it was going to be urban versus rural. It was going to be people who were conservative versus liberal, or whatever it was going to be. It's going to be the people that say, stop messing with me, versus the people who think that they can tinker well enough to make things happen. Again, it'll be those who want to be left alone by those who can't leave well enough alone. That's where this divide in this country is coming down to. And it's amazing that they're going to be putting more and more people on the folks that want to be left alone. You're going to find more and more people. They're going to go, hey, what's your feel? Can I talk to you about our Lord and Savior Israel and the nation Israel that we all have to support? And I'm going to go, no, like, go away. Leave me alone. I don't care. And they're like, but you have to care. If you don't, you're a hateful Jew hater. It's like, what? Okay, fine. Yes, then I hate Jews. I hate you. I hate everything that you said. I hate everything about you. I hate science. I hate masks. I hate shots that I don't want. I hate government. I hate all the things that you say that I hate. I hate them. I'm on the team. I'm on the team that's not on your team because you suck. I just want to be left alone. That's my actual team name. You can call us whatever you like. And you're going to make that team bigger and bigger. And it turns out a lot of young people, I think, are getting there too, because they're like, what on earth are you guys talking about? This is crap. We can see the numbers. And they don't have to believe everything that's on TV. They're growing up in an era where AI lies. Where if they see Tom Massie in an AI-generated video with Ilhan Omar and freaking AOC, they don't think that they're somehow in a three-way couple or a throuple. That was a legitimate thing that one of the people that Ryan Matta's and the influencers down there in Kentucky found. Some lady was like, yeah, he was in a 3-way with these 2 ladies. I'd be like, I don't think so. But the fact that you think so says a lot about what's going on in this country to me, about how old and stupid you are.
And I think the way that people consume their information is the paradigm shift that's gone on there, where we're not really doing the cable news thing anymore. Now, look, that's still an outsized portion of people who clearly go to the polls and primaries, consume their news from cable news. But time comes for everybody. And I think we're going to reach that sooner rather than later, where people are in an online space and they're going to have extra scrutiny. And I think the younger generations are the types that are saying, yeah, I don't think that Tom Massie was in a throuple. That's probably AI, rather than, well, there's a video, so clearly it's true.
It must be true if there's a video. Do you want to, I'll say this. I've got a Jessica Tarloff clip on the 5. She's the female, leftist liberal on there. Ooh. The craziest thing about it is it's 2.5 minutes where she silences Waters and Gutfeld and the others, and they don't know what to do. And she just drops a bunch of facts on them about what happened in Massie's race, and none of them can refute it. And she brings up things that are clearly accurate. It's really hard to listen to, so I'm probably not going to do it, but it's on my social media feed right now, and I may do it. I might do it tomorrow, or on Tuesday rather. We'll come back with it. I might need a weekend to be able to digest. It's really funny when a woman who people are basically like, she's dumb, listen to her voice, it's awful. I'm like, she's right. She's right in the same way that I'm not real crazy about it. I'm like, MTG's not my fave. She wouldn't be. But when she's right, she's right. And when you call people gutless cowards and you're right about them, you can be right, even if I don't like you, it turns out. Like Jim Comey can be right. He was right about them being still lingering in these government agencies. Sometimes we should just listen to like who's out there. Forget about what we think about who they are. Let's just look at what the message is, and is it accurate? And if you don't like it, you can always change the channel. And somebody mentioned it earlier. Renzo in our chat said it. I pointed out yesterday. How many people saw Tom Massie talking and were like, I hate him. Let's go back to Ow My Balls. I want to turn back on, the show about getting kicked in the nuts, like Idiocracy, because I just, that's more entertaining than reality. Hurts my feelings to know reality.
The people that are blindly saying that Tom Massie, the Scott Jennings types, they're saying what he said was abhorrent and despicable and he should be exiled from polite society. They're the exact people that saw Elon Musk say thank you to a crowd, and they were saying that's BS that you're saying he was doing a Heil Hitler, Sig Heil salute. But it's teams, right? It's back to the confrontation that I was having on Timcast, where there's just allegiance to an individual or a party, and then you ask the question of, well, why? Like, what are your principles? What are your policies? It doesn't matter. Just, do you want to wear the ribbon or not?
Why won't he wear the ribbon? Who won't wear the ribbon? Steve Friend won't wear the ribbon. The American Radicals. That's kind of what I think that's where that name came from. Like the radical idea that we would just have like some principles and not be on a team. God forbid. Steve, why don't you tell people what you got coming up, and we'll shut this down.
Sure. Well, I alluded to it earlier. I'm going to do a little bit of a history deep dive on Grover Cleveland and how that mentality has completely changed. And now the way we're presently constituted, where we have a paternalistic government that is the source of all things that are good, essentially a jobs program. So I got a bunch of different examples on that on the American Radicals podcast, coming to you in just a few minutes, noontime Eastern, on Rumble, YouTube at AmRadPod. You can always check us out over at Spotify after the fact. Again, AmRadPod. And as an administrative note, my Twitter handle just got changed thanks to George Santos. So no longer Real Steve Friend, at Steve Friend.
So he offers some value in the world, and it's changing Twitter handles. Way to go. Way to go, George Santos. He can't have a gun. Freaking jams. He can't own a gun, but way to go, George Santos. Appreciate it. Well, thanks, Steve, for joining me, and have fun with that. The Grover Cleveland thing actually was fascinating, so I hope people will check that out. If you've never had an appreciation for Grover Cleveland, which I never did, maybe I will now.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend, my friend. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got to do something stupid and fun. I'm worried about some of you. Most of you probably are not well prepared for what's coming. You're not out there taking care of yourself in a way that's meaningful. You got to start looking into your teeth health. You probably should be worried about antibiotics, your fitness. The F's: faith, family, fitness, firearms. Let's talk about that. Have you thought about having random stranger conversations and trying to get them ready for the future apocalypse or when the shit hits the fan? If not, this is what it would look like if my younger brother was doing it. This is not my younger brother, but it might as well be.
Are you prepping for when shit hits the fan?
No.
gallon of water per person per day. Ideal if you could get a well with a hand pump, but just won't work around here.
Are you flirting with me?
Me? If trying to help you is flirting.
Trying to help me drink water?
And get fuel.
Get fuel.
You'll need a generator even though they're loud as shit. Solar is the long play.
What matters right now?
Getting a doctor who trusts you. Stockpile antibiotics. Make sure your teeth are good. Ammo, obviously. Do your neighbors have skills?
One of my neighbors is a dog walker.
I'm worried about you. Do you want a skill swap?
Can you be a lawyer?
I don't know how important that's going to be in what we're talking about. What was your name?
I thought we weren't going to use names.
Smart.
Guys, we can skill swap over at KyleSeraphin.com. That's our locals community. That can get you in a lot of trouble, but you should probably do that. Some of you guys need to stop thinking and you need to start doing. You need to start getting after it. You need to stop planning. It's not analysis by paralysis. This one's got some swear words in it. Let's retard Max as we shut down on this Friday.
Fuck the steps, fuck the routine, fuck the coordination, fuck the strategy. Throw it all in the fucking trash. You need one thing. Be fucking retarded. Retard Max your life. Stop thinking and just start doing. That's it. You don't need the fucking course. You don't need to go read that book. You don't need a whiteboard to write your routine and your manifestations. You just need to be fucking retarded and take action. Everything you wanted to do, everything you thought you could do, you can. Just go and try it. Stop thinking. Intrusive action. Trust your natural instinct, your gut, and go and fucking do it. Be retarded.
It's a little bit much. It's a little bit much. But it's true. Go to church. Go love your families. Go mow your lawn with your electric lawnmowers. You haters, they work great. I hope you guys have a good weekend. Honor our fallen dead that gave it for this country. And we'll come back on Tuesday after Memorial Day weekend. So I hope you guys have a fantastic 3-day if you are a government employee, probably a 2-day for normal people. I'm sure I'll be doing a bunch of work. It just won't be that. And I look forward to seeing you guys then. God bless you. See you on the other end.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.